Cavanaugh, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It is a huge honor.
Yeah, thank you. It's my honor, really. And it was super fun meeting you at the Porch Society. I really wasn't expecting that because I hadn't seen you there before, so that was cool.
It was my first year.
Was it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was a blast to see you there. How did you enjoy it?
I did. And I always knew that I would enjoy it, but I've been home with kids and it's very hard for me to leave home raising kids. And so I think that, and plus my work also wasn't, even though I do a lot of commission portraits, I don't really feel like my work is portrait. It is, I know it's silly to say that, but it's not like traditional portrait. And so maybe that's one thing, but I always knew every time I saw the pictures, I'm like, these are my people, So
yeah. I think a lot of us sort of feel that way because I do family portraits, but I try and make them a little less formal, a little less traditional. And it feels a little, I don't know, maybe I'm delusional or maybe I'm just pretending to be something I'm not. But I think it's like, this is a little more than a portrait, maybe. One of my teachers asked me back when I was in college, it was a question I never forgot. And I still think about it all the time. And because she called me a show off because I was one of the people in the department that could actually draw. It was a modern department and everyone just splashed paint around. And she was a modern artist teacher. She's like, she basically called me a show off and not so mean of a way. She had a point and she's like, and then she asked me, she's like, Jeff, I know you can draw. Everyone knows you can draw, but how do you make a portrait more than a portrait? And if I learned anything in college, it was that question. And I've kept it with me my entire career. It's how do you make a portrait more than a portrait? I don't know if I've solved it, but I'm after that. And I think you're after that too. And I think you have solved it. It's easy for me to say as an outside observer that you have solved that question. Have you thought about that before? Has that question ever come to you?
First of all, where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so many incredible painters in Utah, and I mean,
it's not the colleges.
It's all going to school at.
Yeah, no, it's not the colleges. We've talked about this in other podcasts, what the theory is. I mean, it's partly the colleges because there was back in the 70s, there was an artist from England named Alvin Gittins. And when everyone else was steeped in modernism, we had this portrait artist that was top notch. And there's portraits all over the city, all over the state that he's done. And he brought up a few other portrait painters like Randall Lake and William Whitaker and a handful of others. And then they had their posterity, and then they had, and I'm the generation below the Whitaker people, and the ones that you probably have heard of are all that next generation. So I think it has come from having sort of a head start. But that's just my theory. People have other theories. But you're right. There's a crazy amount of artists in Utah.
And good.
Yeah, it's wild. You wouldn't think. It's just such a hobunk state,
Right. I haven't been to Utah, but I know it's beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah, you should come out here sometime. We'll hang out. It's gorgeous. I'm kidding. It's not a hobunk state. It's a great state. Salt Lake City is a great city. And it's a cool state, but it's surprising nonetheless. But, yeah. And you went to a better school, if I remember right. I was going through your bio.
I went to Kendall College of Art and Design.
Okay. So it was a legitimate art school.
Well, I think I faced a lot of the things that you faced too.
Oh, really?
Heavy like postmodernism.
Oh, okay.
Really no. I mean, there was that, okay, but there were some really strong like teachers and professors in the foundations.
Yeah.
So I had an incredible drawing teacher, two incredible drawing teachers, one for just perspective and all that, and then another one for the figure. And then, I think it was nice having a mix, but Kendall.
All right, I want to hear about Kendall. But first, I want to know about your whole life story. Go back to birth. Tell me everything from the minute you were conceived. So I want to know. I want to know your story, and then we'll talk about Kendall when we get to that stage.
Okay, okay, that's so funny. Well, I mean, I think it's really important to talk about how I lost my hearing because that was, I think, really a big part of how I became, visual and all that. So when I was 2, I had spinal meningitis, and that took all of the hearing in my right ear and maybe half or a little more than half of the hearing in my left ear. So the doctor told my mom, just treat her like normal. She'll adjust. They didn't want to, they didn't do hearing aids or anything like that. I don't think they had the kind that like goes to the other side. Now they can pick it up, but they didn't do any of that. So I was raised, just sitting at the front of the classroom. And I think what I see that my hearing loss gave me was that because I have to read lips, because I needed to communicate, I had to read lips, I had to look at compositions of the body and be just very connected and like have undivided attention to whoever I'm speaking to and communicating to. So that really just gave me a deep love for others, I feel like. So, going through childhood, I also came from very creative people on both
Can I
sides
ask you a question about the deafness before you go
yeah.
too much further? Your voice sounds completely normal. I never would have expected that you were deaf. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how deaf are you, and how do you have such a normal voice? I had no clue. Normal's
Well,
not the right word.
No, I understand. I was
Yeah.
2 years. I was hearing for 2 years.
Yeah, but that's just 2 years.
Well, I think that my guess is that that's what it is that for 2 years I was already speaking whenever I had lost hearing. So
You
then,
already were speaking at 2 years old, enough to have established a voice?
oh, I think so. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't like, I don't think that I was like brilliant or anything like that, but I mean, I had there's a lot of those first few years that is so important. And my guess is that's why. But I mean, I'm not totally deaf.
So what do you hear? How much do you hear?
I have about 40% in my left ear. I have about 40%
That's
hearing in
it.
that's it. And
Wow.
it's like a muscle that is built up. I don't know. But I went through school without ever having a hearing aid, but I do have to read lips. So like COVID, when everyone was wearing masks, that was really hard.
Oh, that's brutal. That must have been
It was
really
hard.
lonely for you.
I mean, I live in a rural town
Oh,
that
okay.
I
Well,
mean,
no one was wearing masks in rural towns anyway.
not that much. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Then everyone's like, forget it. And so it wasn't that bad. But there are times even now people are still wearing the mask, and I'm like, I can't understand you unless you take that thing off. I have to read your lips, or I can't hear. So
Wow.
there's just but like also a quiet situation, like you and I are having a conversation right now, and there's no other sound. If I'm on the phone, I have no problem at all because it's like directly into my ear. And just in a quiet situation, it's pretty easy. But if I'm in a noisy environment or other things going on, that's very difficult.
Wow, that's incredible. So when I met you, I didn't notice you turning your left ear toward me or anything, or you hide it really well. I mean, I'm assuming that's not your intention, but for some reason you've assimilated to a hearing world, and I never even would have known.
Yeah, I have, and I think that the only time that I notice that I have problems hearing is when I'm with other people, like my husband, and when I'm with him and we're going not at home but outside, like with people and crowds or whatever, he is constantly saying, "She didn't hear you. She didn't hear you. She didn't hear you." Or friends of mine when they didn't know that I had, like if we would have spent any time together, you probably would have said, "Oh, I don't like why." People will say, "Oh, I didn't know you were deaf, so that's why you ignored me that one time."
Yeah.
Okay. So I do
You
get
just come off as a
feedback.
total snob sometimes,
Right,
probably.
right. I try to make up for it by, I think, by just being like, friendly and trying
Yeah.
to show people I'm not ignoring. I just can't always hear. So I know I know that I have, I definitely know that people talk to me. I don't know it until someone's with me and they say, "Yeah, she didn't hear
Sorry.
you. Allie, they're asking you a question," that sort of thing.
Forgive me for laughing, but the
All
reason
right.
I'm laughing is because I was just on the phone with my son in Romania and he really has struggled with the language. He's been there about 18 months and he's finally getting it. He finally can communicate with people. But I was on the phone with him this Sunday and my wife said something to him and he said something completely, he responded in a completely ridiculous way. And you know, the way you do when you can't hear somebody and you're just pretending you heard them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
But it
yeah.
was so obvious he didn't hear what she had said, and I started laughing at him, and he goes, "Oh, you have no idea, Dad. I've been doing that for 18 months. I've got all kinds of lines when I don't understand what people are saying." I'm like, "No, bud, it's not working. You suck at it."
Oh, okay. So you just nailed it, Jeff,
Yeah.
because that is the truth. I don't hear every word. When someone says something to me, I do not hear every word. I piece it together. I hear some of the words and then I can like just piece it together by reading their body
Right.
language and I kind of know. But there have been many times, a lot of times, too many times, I just am very agreeable and act like I hear what's going on and just, to keep it going. But I'm only getting like half of the conversation. And
So
and
huh.
I learned how to just like, not act because it's frustrating for people whenever they're talking to someone that's not hearing what you're saying. If you've, had to maybe talk to old people that are losing their hearing, they, they get frustrated. Other people, it can be very frustrating. So I think
Oh,
over time,
yeah.
I just adapted to that to just be agreeable. But on the other
It
hand,
shouldn't be frustrating for people, though. It shouldn't be. That's just so lame.
it is, and it's
People
not.
can't help it when they can't hear you.
I know it's just if you've ever had like an elderly grandparent where you have to yell at them so that they can hear every word. I mean, you can get used to it, but for
Yeah.
just an average person out there, that's just the way it goes. But on the other hand, what I was going to say that I've noticed in my watercolor community,
Yeah.
it's international. So there's a lot, and I do a lot of mentoring for international groups, people, individual artists and stuff. And so I have noticed that that way of communicating has given me a great talent for understanding people that have broken English because I
Oh,
hear, like parts of the English, when they're talking and I can put it together. I'm like right there with them.
no way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. So I have a
Okay.
question for you.
Yeah.
My situation's completely different, but I imagine we run into a similar problem. And so I wonder if you, and I'll explain in a sec, but I wonder if you feel the need to tell everyone you know your problem so that so you don't run into these awkward social situations. Or is it just kind of like well, apparently not because you didn't tell me. So
Right.
apparently you don't tell people that.
I mean, I put it in my artist statement because I really feel that it
Yeah.
formed my work. And then the only time I really tell people is when I know that there's been a misunderstanding in our conversation, and I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm hard of hearing." So that's what
Okay.
I'm really not considered a deaf person
No,
because
I
I
never would have known. Yeah.
hearing, so I'm hard of hearing is what it is. But
Right. Well, the
and so
reason I ask is because I have short intestines. So I live in the bathroom. And there have been
oh,
times where I remember in college, because I went right from losing my intestines to college. So that's when I first started to realize this is just socially a problem. I'd have a professor talking to me about something serious, and I'd have to use the bathroom so bad. And I'm not talking number one here,
right, I
you
know,
know,
I know.
and I'm going to lose it. And I have to leave the meeting of my professor in a moment. Like I have to run out of the office, and it's unbelievably unprofessional. Or someone will pin me in a public place and they'll start talking to me. And within 5 seconds, due to the anxiety of knowing I'm pinned, it'll stimulate my
Yeah.
situation. And then I have to run. I feel so rude. So I've just been like, from here on out, if I know you at all, I'm going to tell you my situation so that when next time I have to leave in the middle of you telling me some heartfelt story about your life, that you don't think I just think you're annoying. And I'm just trying to get away. It's the most socially awkward situation. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure you love your grandma, but I got to go.
Well, and I think it helps. People want to know these things. They want to know
Yeah.
that. It gives them like the whole picture so they're not offended. But yeah, I remember the first time that I saw your work, I want to say 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, maybe 2007, 2008. Um, and I remember, I don't know if there was something on your website about your cancer.
There
I
was
read
in the
a
beginning.
story
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah, and that always stuck with me, and it really it made a huge impact of just how I looked at your work and was inspired.
I
Very
appreciate that. Yeah. People have lost things. We sort of relate to each other.
yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So what was next? So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. So
you're telling me how the being deaf or hard of hearing affected your way of seeing the world.
yeah, communicating and then my connection to people. I really feel like it gave me a very deep connection to people. And then just kind of like creatively, how did I end up becoming an artist or going to art school? Um, my my mom was a school teacher. My dad was um, he worked in auto Chrysler
Mm-hmm.
auto assembly, and he was a drug addict, an alcoholic, and he
Oh, you got
really
some story.
oh, he had a lot of struggles. My mom was kind of like a single mom for a long time.
Okay, just for the record, this is getting heavy.
Yeah.
So remember, I may have to run to the bathroom.
Okay.
That was a total joke. So I don't want to hurt your feelings if I
That's
just
so
got to
funny.
run right in the middle of it. All right, go ahead. Finish your story.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's so funny. No, but to keep it short, it was my mom was very, very loving, very connected. And but both sides of my family were very creative. Like my both of my grandmothers were seamstresses. My paternal grandmother, she would and no, not a lot of money, very kind of poor, humble families. But my grandmother on my father's side would be able to just look at designer dresses in the window and go home and make them.
No
She could
way. That's
make
awesome.
patterns and that sort of thing. And my mom was really into sewing and taught me how to sew. So my very first um, time of like expressing myself creatively as a child, I think I was around 7 years old, and Pac-Man was really big.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
noticed we were born around the same time. You're in
yeah,
73. I'm 74.
yeah,
Yeah.
73.
Pac-Man. That's
So,
funny.
yeah, I remember Pac-Man was big. So I wanted to make a little Pac-Man set for my sister for Christmas, and my mom taught me how to sew and embroider, and I used felt and stuffing also. So I just
No
remember
way.
making this whole set, this little pouch to put them in and all that.
So just like
So
a little stuffed Pac-Man with the mouth and everything?
what they would call stuffies now. Yeah.
Really? So like a
Little,
pillow shaped like Pac-Man is what you made.
yeah, like little
That's
goat and a little
classic.
Pac-Man, a little pouch to put it in. And I grew up that in middle school, in middle school, you're trying to like you find your identity and things
Yeah.
like that. And so I didn't want any of the clothes that other people had. I wanted to make my own clothes. My mom taught me, and I was making my clothes out of bed sheets. And
Geez, that's risky. That could
because I
backfire
like,
on you.
yeah, my dad said, yeah, don't pee your pants because people think you wet the bed or something. I don't. He can make jokes about it, but anyway, my mom drew the line, and she said you cannot wear the sheet clothes to church. That's where she draws the line. But I could wear them anywhere else. But the reason why I was drawn to sheets is I was really into thrifting, and I love textiles, and I love the patterns of like the 60s and the 70s. Even though we're talking this is like 80s, mid 80s.
You
Um,
wore this stuff to school?
oh yeah.
And how was it received?
Oh, I thrived on it. I thrived on like just standing out and being different. And
So people didn't make fun of you or anything.
oh yeah, I
They
don't
did
laugh.
make fun of you.
Oh, there's laughs, but I had friends, and everyone.
Wow, you're amazing. That's cool.
My mom said, Allie just walks to her own drum beat, and so that's.
Apparently.
And my mom always was supportive of me being different, and so in high school. Well, let me say, I started out in music in middle school, and then took my first art class like probably sophomore year of high school. But I was doing a lot of like drawings and stuff in middle school too. I mean, just regular art stuff. But all through my childhood, teachers would always ask me to help them with their bulletin boards and things like that. So I just had a natural ability for art. But in high school, sophomore year, I took my first serious drawing class, and then and my high school was also not in the rural town that we're in, but it was in another rural town not far from here. And we had four full-time art teachers and a graduating class of 200.
No way.
That,
Why? Where? Wait,
yeah,
where was this?
this is I graduated from DeSoto High School in DeSoto, Missouri. It's kind of south of St. Louis.
That's the way my wife's high school was. She grew up in Livonia, New York, of all places. And it's just like there's more cows than people. And she had this great art department. It's just so bizarre, these certain small towns that just
It
thrive
was
in the arts.
amazing. It was
Huh.
amazing. The art show at the end of the year, if you can imagine, was huge. And so my sophomore year, I won best of show with my drawing. And then I just loved it. And I really started just thriving on making my art. And whenever the teacher gives an assignment for one project, I'm turning in two. I've just always wanted more and more and more. So then my junior year for the art show, I won best of show. And then my senior year, I won best of show. And all my paintings were winning awards in high school, which then made me it really encouraged me to pursue art.
Can I
Okay,
point
it was
out this was the late 80s and early 90s?
right. I graduated in
So you won
1991.
all 3 years best of show. So that was back in the day when people weren't getting effort awards or
Right.
like fairness awards. Like you actually had to earn an award back then, and you
Yes,
and you swept it.
I did. I did.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I loved. I was passionate about it. It came easy for me. I wasn't athletic. So there wasn't that. I was not academic. So that was not competing. It was like a clear path. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I, my parents weren't, and at this time, I should say my mom got remarried when I was 7 or 8, and then or 7, she got remarried, and then my stepdad adopted me, and he was my father. So anyway, my parents were, I needed to find, no, excuse me, I'm sorry. I needed to find a way to get get my college paid for. Okay, so I was really applying to all these art schools. But I was going to go to whoever gave me the best deal, and so Kendall gave me a full tuition scholarship to art schools. So that's how I ended up at Kendall. I
Hmm.
didn't really know anything about it. I said, can I get my degree there? And I really just feel like that's where God led me. So went to Kendall. Kendall is it was uh, it was first a furniture design school. It was actually when I went there, it was the last furniture design school that was left in the country that taught you how to make classic wooden furniture. Um,
Really? That sounds amazing.
yeah, I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids was called Furniture City because that is where all the furniture makers were, and people from all over the world went buy their furniture.
Wow.
And there's like North Carolina was a big furniture place too. But anyway, it was, I would say that Kendall was very traditional compared to a lot of the other schools, but there were, the postmodern teachers, and I think a lot of, I don't know, it's hard. It's a really, I had the best teachers. Okay, really, I really had some amazing teachers, but even with that, professors they already have their paycheck.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they don't really have the best advice for anything that's going to get you anywhere in the business world or thinking about how to make money on your work for survival. So that was kind of like this a very big missing link that I think a lot of people, a lot of artists that are going to art school, they kind of graduate with this big hole about like, how do you support yourself?
Well, did you
So
get what I got in college where my teachers would tell all of us it can't be done? Like you can't make a
oh, you
living.
got to be a teacher, right? Because
Yeah.
that's their path. That's their path.
Right.
It couldn't have been done without them getting their masters and going on to being a professor. That was what the advice that they had for us. I
Hmm.
Yeah. And then if you did anything different than that, then you would have to sell out, and that's not honorable,
That's what
right?
they would say, you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in so many ways. Okay, maybe not
Right.
totally that, but
No, they said that blatantly to us.
yeah.
I've
Well,
definitely heard that.
I'm gonna give some
Yeah.
of them the benefit of the doubt because I feel like, but yeah, as a whole, they don't really have any advice. And so I graduated from art school in '95, and maybe 2 years after that, started my own art school with another woman that I graduated with from Kendall. And so we had this non-accredited art school, all ages, and I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then
I love
I
the name of that school, by the way, the New School
did school.
Academy. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very original. I like that. It's a new school. It's so we might as well call it new
right,
school.
right. And it was cute. It was in an old church, and
Yeah.
it was really neat, and it was really fun. Except that I really got burned out teaching, and at so I think that's important to say is that I didn't want to pursue teaching because anymore after that because I had burnout, and
Mm.
I thought
So
you
did you
cannot.
just go in head first and do it pretty much full time when you started the school?
I was teaching 60 hours. I mean, I was maybe teaching 60 hours, but I was working 60 hours a week. I
Right.
worked my butt off when I was teaching, and I was teaching all the time. And it was like, it was just too much because
Mm.
I really did realize that it's very difficult, not that you can't, but it's very difficult to teach and do your art. So, or really uh, master your work, your art, because, it's all this, by the time you're done teaching, you're exhausted. It's not like,
Hmm.
okay, now I'm going to go spend 6 hours in the studio. It just doesn't work like that, or at least it didn't for me. So then I decided, okay, teaching's not going to happen. And this was the late 90s, I think, no, 2000. And we were in Grand Rapids, Michigan, here with this art school, all of these artists, a town with a ton of artists, and no one was coming to Grand Rapids to collect art. And that was really the thing that um, I realized is that at the time, the internet was not a place for us to buy and sell work. You really needed to be physically present in a town where people are coming to buy art. So that's why we decided to move to Santa Fe, New Mexico. That was at the time the third largest art market.
Are you married at this point?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I got married in '94. My husband and I have been married for 30 years.
You're 21 or something when you got married?
Yes. And,
Wow.
and we've been married for 30 years this September.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have 4 kids.
How old are your
And
kids?
well, this is crazy. We started a second family. We have a 29-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old, all the same parents.
Wow.
We spread them out.
Holy moly, a 12 and a
Yeah. And you're gonna
29-year-old?
yeah, you're gonna like this because when in 2010 when I was or 2009 when I was pregnant with our third child, we found out my husband had cancer, and I had a newborn and
What a
a
nightmare.
husband going through chemo, and it was really hard. It was really tough chemo. Like in 5 days, he went from like normal 5 days on chemo, practically dead. It was like really, really bad chemo. And I had a newborn, but that was a miracle because I just really I never felt the weight of that because of all the prayers. I really felt almost
Really?
almost felt like my feet weren't touching the ground. That's how much the prayers were holding me up.
You
So
got
that
some
was
serious
amazing.
faith. That's impressive.
It was amazing. And then 2 years after that, we had another baby. So that's kind of how like the last one came along too, because it's like just kind of that last little cancer defeat. Like you didn't, they said you're probably not going to be able to have more kids. So that was like just having our little girl.
Do you mind if I ask what he had?
He had testicular cancer, the exact same as Lance Armstrong.
Same, that's what I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, my intestines being lost had to do with complications, had nothing to do with the cancer. So what? Wait, testicular, but he would have been like in his 30s, right?
They thought it was a hernia. They didn't catch it for a whole year.
They did the same thing to me. But I was 21, but they kept telling me I had like a bacterial infection or something.
Wow. Yeah, he was 39. So that was really off.
39 and he had
That was really
testicular
off the radar.
cancer.
Yeah, it's because it usually is in youth and like young boys.
How far did it get? Did it get to his lungs or brain?
Only stage one.
Only stage one?
It was
Oh,
a
mine was
miracle.
stage three by the time they had it. Man,
I
he,
know it was a miracle
so they
because
didn't catch it in time and it still didn't go past stage one?
it was a miracle. Yeah, it was.
Wow. Good for him. And now it's been how many years in remission?
Well, that was 2009.
Whoa, 15
Yeah,
years.
15
Good
years.
for him. So he's definitely out of the woods
Yeah,
by a
yeah,
long
and
shot.
it was yeah, it was all a miracle. Everything,
Wow.
whole life is a miracle. Like there's so many miracles.
So
But
cool.
that's how our number four came along because that was, like I said, that one last defeat over cancer and, just being able to have another baby. So that was wonderful. So, here I'm my career, or when I call that, when my art was, we'll get to that, but I had to start over with like a newborn and a toddler, like running around like while I'm
Yeah.
painting for shows. And so it was kind of crazy. But to back up a little bit, in 2001, I realized when we were in Grand Rapids and we're in this town that has all these artists, I need to move to a place, a city that where I can be connected to a serious art scene. And so that's why we moved to Santa Fe and we lived there until
What
2007.
about your husband's work? How did that work out?
He did mortgages. He owned a mortgage company.
Okay. So he could
So
go anywhere?
yeah. He just he started a mortgage company there in Santa Fe.
Wow.
So yeah, in 2007, that's when we decided to move back to the Midwest. Um,
Why?
wanted to be, well, it's a lot of reasons. Kind of, it was just like our time was done there. I had gotten few really good galleries.
Well, now
I,
there's the internet, so you don't have to be anywhere
well,
necessarily. Well, it's starting to
right,
get that way.
right. Well, I mean, it was 2006. I remember, well, let me say this, because this is a really important part of the story, is that while living in Santa Fe, I went there to get my art at a professional level.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I was working in oils. I was an oil
You
painter.
were?
Yes, I was. I was terrible, Jeff, though. You would have
I
met.
didn't know that. How could you? Okay, this is, well, I don't want to get off, but we need to talk about this.
We
How can
can
you
get
be
on
terrible
track
at oils and good at watercolor? Watercolor is hell. It's
because
the
I'm a
hardest
drawer.
medium.
I'm a drawer. I'm a drawer, and I use watercolor like egg tempera.
Well, that
It's
means
very
nothing to
much
me. I don't
that
know
same
that one
process
either.
with little hatches, and so I
Oh,
just had so much more control with the watercolor, and oil was
really?
just too much. And I know that if I would have had the right teacher,
Yeah, you would have figured it out.
yeah, because so my drawing professors were great in art school, but my painting professors were very postmodern and abstract. So I had like
Mm-hmm.
really no structure and it didn't, but I was doing I look back at them now and they're really fun paintings. I don't know, I'll just show it. I don't think there's any of them on the website, but um you can see my voice. You can
Are
see
there any
my,
on the internet?
I don't think so.
Oh, good.
Probably on my daughter's Instagram, which is private because
Oh,
she has
okay.
things, but
I'm
I'll
so
send them to you.
curious. Okay.
I'll send them to
Oh,
you. Yeah.
the rest of you, the audience, yeah, sucks to be
Yeah,
you.
they're
I
kind of
want to see them.
graphic. Yeah, so I mean, when I started oil painting my last year of college and for my thesis work, I had just returned from Japan. So
Mm-hmm.
I spent a summer in Japan, in Tokyo, and I was really influenced by how, like Japanese pop art and the
Mm-hmm.
flat color fields and all that. And so I went from like realism and traditional drawing and all that to just very abstracted figures and kind of simplified figures with no form and cutouts. And there was a lot of like textile stuff. But I'll send you some images that
Okay.
you can share if you want to do that. But so anyway, I was this oil painter and I was trying every Friday. I was going to the open studio or open galleries on Canyon Road in Santa Fe. Have you been to Canyon
I've
Road?
never been to Santa Fe. I need to go.
Well, Canyon Road's like a quarter mile long, and there's at the time that I lived there over 200 galleries in this quarter.
Whoa.
Yeah, and people come from all over the world to collect art there. It's amazing. Santa Fe is amazing. So, um,
Do people walk it or they drive it?
do you walk it? It's old
Wow.
Santa Fe where it's like, tiny little paths and stuff. But I find, I would go every Friday and get to know all of the galleries, get to know all the gallery
Yeah.
directors and all that, and then started sharing my work with them. And they would say, and they all kind of said the same thing, but you're good. This work is good, but it's not something that I could sell. And in
Mm,
retrospect, now when I look back at that work, I see a lot of healing that was happening. I think
mm-hmm.
I know the oil painting medium was very heavy, and then the emotion was very heavy and kind of dark too. So those two things together was just like too much heavy. The galleries could recognize that that I had talent, that my paintings were good, just not something that was really saleable
Right.
in the galleries. So I had that in the back of my mind. Okay. And but I did get gallery representation at Wally Workman Gallery in Austin, Texas. At the
Mm-hmm.
time she had a show. I also had a mentor in Santa Fe that I met, and she was really helping me, just kind of as a friend, just talking and kind of talking through different issues of why I wasn't having success with my work. And then the biggest thing that happened was we were renovating an old house, or not too old, but it was needed major renovation. So we were renovating this house, and um, I wanted a courtyard put onto the house, and I asked this guy that we were having that was doing the windows, would you want to barter a family portrait to put this wall in a courtyard? And he went and talked to his wife, and he came back and he said, yes, we
Mm.
do want to barter a portrait. They had a bunch of kids, and so he said, my wife loves watercolor. Could you do a portrait watercolor? And I didn't even hesitate because my portrait skills were good. I was confident in my portrait skills. I had no fear about that. And you know how that is,
You
like,
were confident in getting a likeness, you mean?
right. Getting a
Right.
likeness wasn't an issue. I knew I would be able to do the portrait. And yeah, I'll figure out the watercolor. That's kind of the thought in my head was, I want this courtyard and I'll figure out the watercolor. So I went to the art supply store and I got a huge piece of Arches paper. And when I got home, I realized that they had accidentally given me two pieces of paper, like they stuck together. So the portrait I did, the barter went great. And then the second piece of paper, I cut into three pieces, and I did the exact same subject that I was doing in my oils, which was my daughter at the time. All of my art has been of my kids and then their friends, but at the time it was just my oldest daughter who was my model, um, and then I put these three watercolors in my show with all like 15 oil paintings that I had in my first show at Wally Workman Gallery, and the whenever the opening and all that, the people were just kind of really congregated around the watercolors, and that is what everyone wanted to talk about, and they were really drawn to it. And I had never had a response to my work like that before.
Mm.
Uh, so on that drive home from Austin to Santa Fe after that show, I was just, I don't know, it really made a huge impact on me. And I thought, I've never had this happen before, where people are so interested in this, and I need to really explore this. I need to dedicate to watercolor. And so I said to myself, I'm going to give myself 6 months, and I'm just going to do watercolors on paper, and the same figure, the same concept, everything. And then after those 6 months, remember the marketing packages you'd have to put together to send to galleries, to, the slides and all of that. I had put that together, and uh, I think I did 10 of those packages and gave them to all my top 10 favorite galleries in Santa Fe that I wanted to be in. And every single one of them sent back a letter that they said they loved these watercolors, all positive. Like, this is amazing, because they were familiar with oil painting. See, I had made relationships and friends with all of these people. And so one gallery said, and that was when I really wanted to be in, they said, come back, meet us, bring these paintings. So I brought them in, and they said, okay, everything's good except that we cannot sell work on paper because the print market had really become, reproductions had really become a popular thing at the time. And so they said the work, and for that gallery, you would be able to see it. Work behind glass just was not going to work with what the other, as a whole with all the other artists. So they said, if you can figure out a way to get your watercolors out from behind glass, we definitely would be interested in representing you. So,
whoa. Is that what you do?
Right. My work isn't behind glass.
What?
None of it.
No kidding.
No.
I wasn't expecting that. This is bonus.
Yeah. It's all on paper.
I can't wait to hear about this.
Okay. So we're working on this house, right? We're renovating. Yeah. And I learned to do the plaster walls with trowels. The same guy that did the trade, the barter, he also did, this, they call it diamond troweled walls, plaster or something in Santa Fe. I don't know but anyway, he did that, and he taught me how to do it so that I could do it inside the house. So
why did he teach you how to do it? What benefit?
I wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to plaster the walls. We're renovating this house, and I love to do home renovation projects and stuff like that. So he taught me how to do this plaster with trowels and water. And so as I was doing these walls with the trowels, I thought, can I make a clay panel to do watercolor on? Like, what are frescoes, And I started just kind of doing this deep dive into an alternative surface to do watercolor paintings on that wasn't paper. And then I started researching all the products, because I was going to make these clay panels. And then that's when I found Ampersand's Aqua Board. That was kind of a brand new thing. And so I thought, well, I'll just order some aqua boards and do some paintings on them. And so that's what I did. And I did a few paintings. Again, the same concept, the same colors. And then I took those paintings back to the gallery that were on the clay panels. And
so the aqua board, that's their claim, is that you don't need to put these behind glass.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So and back then it was actually not called aqua board. It was called clayboard textured.
Okay.
So now, they have clayboard now, and then they have clayboard texture back then. They didn't call it aqua board. So
yeah, this was the stuff you gave me at the Porch Society, and I didn't realize that maybe you told me you didn't have to put it behind glass, but I don't remember that detail.
I think I told you.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it is incredible. It's amazing. It's a revolution. Jeff, we're going to take over the world.
So okay, but do you still have to varnish it? Because you still have to keep it clean and be able to remove the varnish, right?
Yeah.
Do you use traditional oil painting varnishes or what?
Acrylic.
Acrylic, but is it removable?
It is. It is.
What?
Yeah, you can remove it and then touch up a painting. Like,
how do you remove it?
With ammonia or alcohol. I've never done it, but I've had other people do it.
Oh, this is wild. And it doesn't.
I've never had to go back into a painting because before I seal it, but for example, I know that other artists have to, okay, but one of my patrons, we call them the alligators, because it's the alligator watercolor community, and that's ALI.
As in alley, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Love it.
Anyway, it started out as kind of just a joke, and then it just caught to where I couldn't undo it. But so now they're alligators. But anyway, an alligator did a portrait for a family, and then did another portrait at a different time period, didn't have them side by side. And then when she shipped the second portrait, and this was just like a 12 by 12, the skin tone was so off. Like they didn't even look good together or something. They didn't really match. And so she was like, what do I do? And I said, you can remove it. This is how. And so she removed all of the coating, the spray. It's spray acrylic, Krylon UV matte spray.
That's it. That's the same thing I use for drawings. Okay.
Yeah, their museums here. Yeah. And so she removed it and she repainted the face and varnished it again, and it's beautiful, and they looked great together. So the varnish can be removed and the painting can
It's not acetone by any chance you remove it with, is it?
It might have been,
because acetone is potent.
I don't know if it was acetone. I want to say it was ammonia.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting. Really?
I'm not sure. I can get back to
Okay,
you.
yeah, I really need to know that. We should put that in the show notes because this is good stuff.
Oh, it's great stuff. I mean, the surface is just amazing. So anyway, I got some of these clayboard textured panels. I did some paintings and I took them to the gallery. And they were so in love with these paintings. They were just like, this is amazing. This was January of 2007. And they said, I think it was like May or June. They said, it was like 5 months. We're going to the New York Affordable Art Fair. How many of these can you get us? Because we're going to take these to the Affordable Art Fair. So I went home and just painted my heart out all spring. I made a whole series of paintings, and I really only used 3 colors for this series, and that was burnt sienna, burnt umber, and Payne's gray. That was, or black. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was just those 3 colors. Payne's gray.
You just wanted a cool brown and a warm brown, basically?
Yes, it was just what I had really on these works that are on paper that I did.
Yeah.
I took it down to one or 2 colors. It was just like a red. It was probably like a cad medium.
Well, the one right above your head right now is like green and red. That's all it is, it seems like.
Yeah, oh, these 2 back here, they're
No, the one in the slideshow. Do you not see the slideshow?
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Oh, it's past now. It's past now, but well,
Okay.
let me pull up something real quick though. This is one I wanted to show right off the bat. And this is a good example of really minimal palette.
Right.
Right. Whoop, wrong one. Right here. I mean, I guess it's not that minimal.
And that's like way down the road from what I'm talking right now. If you go,
God, this painting is insane.
Thank you.
Insane. Okay, let's see one of your.
Has really special story, Jeff, but I can't jump to it just yet.
No, don't jump to it yet. That's fine.
Really
so bring me to something that is in this first series if you have it.
Okay.
Is it in here? Well, that's pretty limited palette.
I have been posting some newer pieces lately because I've been getting a show together. You just keep scrolling and I'll tell you when. But I've been getting a show together, going through a lot of old paintings, going through archives, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to start at 2010, and because 2010 I wasn't on Instagram, so I just have started sharing all my paintings from.
Geez, you are prolific. You have like 1,000 paintings on here.
I have painted a lot. Okay, go up there, up. Okay, see those 2 arms up, down, that book cover?
Yeah, right here.
No, down. 2 more
right here.
rows.
That's a limited palette.
Yeah, right.
Get out of town.
Now that is not one from that era. But it was a lot like that. Okay, that was really the look.
It's amazing how it looks full color. I mean, I guess you did add a little bit of red, or is that just burnt umber?
It's red for the fingernails, okay, but the skin is really just burnt umber and burnt sienna, and then black.
Wow.
I mean, that's very, very limited.
That's weird. That's wild. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit around there, but so this first set of paintings that I took back to this gallery that they took the Affordable Art Fair, it was along these lines right here of this painting. And they loved them. They took the paintings, they sold all of them. They came back, they said, "You're a rock star. We sold out. We need more." And so that was really the beginning of, when it all clicked for me. And I think the biggest part of that success was that I became very open to criticism. I had like shed the art school mindset of, the work is heavy, deal with it, or that's just what I am. I'm being honest with who I am. And I think it's really good to be authentic and honest in your work. It is, but it's also good to listen to the world, because I feel like, for me anyway, it was like, I want to make work that people can relate to.
This is a timely This is a timely discussion we're having because you probably haven't heard the 100th episode, have you?
Not yet. I haven't listened.
Oh,
I was saving it.
really? It's interesting that you're bringing this up because one of the things that Joe Paquette said is, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but the question I proposed to three of my guests, it was Joe Paquette, Rose Franson, and Kwang Ho. It was a powerhouse group. And it was just a discussion. It wasn't about their careers or a discussion. I asked them one question and we talked for almost 2 hours about it. What is art? And Joe Paquette, one of the things that he believes is really important in making art is to say something without the desire to be heard or something to that effect. And what he meant by being heard is being concerned with your audience and their approval.
Right.
And as you're now, I'm not, that's just his opinion, right?
Right.
But it's interesting the timing because he said that then, and now you're saying this now. And I don't think there's a conflict. And I would like you to address that because I don't think there's a conflict with what you're doing and being and what he's saying because your work is still very, very authentic.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen it like in a Venn diagram. I think we've all seen it. What the world
Yeah.
wants, what you like to paint, what the world wants, and then there is a middle ground there, a middle ground in that Venn diagram where you can make the work that is honest and all of that, and not compromise yourself and not be doing it. And but it's more to me. I had a very, I think art school can give people a very big ego, I guess, or something. It's just something that's impenetrable. And I also think
Mm-hmm.
it's also just immaturity too.
Mm-hmm.
And also just being kind of like really influenced by the postmodern world that we're in, that is all about like, you know, not trying to achieve beauty.
Yeah.
That's really the ultimate thing. I feel like it's like my heart also changed. This whole story that I've told you lines up perfectly with my own faith journey that I had gotten off track going. I was raised Christian and then gotten off track in college. And it was around 2005 that I had a major um, reversion to Christianity and faith and just trying to heal from childhood wounds and like really aggressively like trying to just deal with anything in my heart that was not pure. And
So what
so,
happened? What was
well,
the turning point?
I converted to Catholicism. My husband was a Catholic, and then I converted to Catholicism. And then this is more than what I was planning on
No,
saying,
I'm
Jeff.
really curious
If you want
though.
to hear it, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Um, but I became a Catholic because we were in Santa Fe, and it was like just so beautiful that it just swept me away. Like all the churches and the faith of the people and just that history and stuff. I don't know. It just really just it appealed to me visually, not
Yeah. The
really.
Catholic Church has the corner on aesthetics.
Yeah, so there was that drew me in,
Yeah.
but I didn't really have it on a heart. I mean, not really. I mean, and maybe when I say not really, God was just getting me there. Okay, he had to go like step by step. Like I can appeal to Allie with visuals, so that's what I'm gonna do first. So he
Right.
got me, and then I started listening. I saw a Catholic bumper sticker on a car, and I thought, well, that's crazy that the Catholic Church would have a radio station. How could they have so much to talk about? That was it's so ignorant now that I think about it. Embarrassing. It's embarrassing, but that's how little I knew. Okay. So
Yeah.
then I started listening to Catholic radio, and then that listening to radio really hits you in a place where you can be very vulnerable. So that like I started understanding the sacrament of confession. So that's again, I didn't think I was going to go here, Jeff. So I wasn't
No,
planning on
I'm curious. This
something
is
like that.
part of your life. If it's related to your art, it's important to
It's
me.
it's really crazy how much it lines up with my work and how
Mm-hmm.
this light came into my work because there was so much darkness in my oil paintings and so much sadness. And then it was like all I did was change mediums. And then all of a sudden my work had this like spiritual and uplifting feeling to it and all that. But going back to the faith journey is, I had both of my fathers were abusive. Okay, not just my first one, but my second father,
Oh
my
my
step.
gosh. That's
So
terrible luck.
I had a lot of wounds, and at the time I didn't talk to my parents very much for like 10 years. Let's just say I had a lot of healing that
Yeah.
I needed to go through. And that is also like a major miracle. But the thing is that I really found and understood what the sacrament of confession was all about. I mean, that's something as my whole life is just like laughable. Like why do you have to tell someone your sins? Like that's ridiculous. But it for me to be able to say every single thing that was in my conscience, and then to have someone just say, you are loved, you are healed, go in peace. And so that was like, so I just can't, there's no words for it. It just totally changed my life. And then I was like, I was going to confession every single week, just unloading. It was like I would unload stuff and then God would give me more stuff to unload and more stuff. It was like just my whole life of sins, like, just so much healing, all that. And then it was like just totally reflecting in my art. I feel like looking back, I didn't really see that at the time. So, yeah, so there was that. And then we decided to move out of Santa Fe because um, the it was right before the housing mortgage crisis and all that happened in 2008. And my husband could kind of see that so the stuff was going to happen. He didn't, he just kind of had like a sense about it. So he sold his business and we left Santa Fe and moved closer to the Midwest. And as I was like getting so much healing and peace, I was ready to live like close to my family again and all that. And so we moved to a little town called St. Genevieve, Missouri, and it is a wonderful town, about 4,500 people. And it's in south of St. Louis, maybe an hour if you know where St. Louis is at. It's on the Mississippi, and it just became a national park 3 years ago because there's really cool old French architecture here from the early 1700s, which is kind of,
Wow, really? That is
yeah,
too cool.
it's a cool little town. But I was able to move here because I had already established my work online, and I was already in galleries. I mean, once I really started having a lot of success with that first gallery in Santa Fe, the successes just kept building. Like I was on the cover of American Art Collector. I don't know if you remember that in 2009 with
I
the
do. And we have that on your website.
yeah, I had that, and then it just seemed like I was always getting um, magazine articles and galleries. I mean, it just started kind of growing out of control, really. Not out
Hmm.
of control. When I say out of control,
In a
it
good
got
way.
it did, and it got so big that I couldn't really keep up with it all, because when you take on another gallery, that's another mouth that you have to feed. That's
Right.
more paintings that you have to produce. And then it was like I was up to 11 galleries and two babies that, because like I said, we started that second family in 2010 and 2012. We had our two youngest kids. So yeah, it was a lot to keep up with. And but it was all good. And going through like all of the, just like, my paintings really reflected my life and where my life was at, and just a journey. When you do a painting and you see the painting and you see all the stuff that was surrounding in your life that was surrounding that painting when you were painting it.
Hmm.
Everyone else just sees the painting, but it is like a journal, and even that only maybe all the things that are going into that painting while you're painting. So I just look back at all those paintings that I've actually been posting a lot of them lately on my Instagram, just to reshare them, because I never really shared all of them,
Mm.
because like I said, that was before Instagram. So in 2013, my oldest daughter graduated from high school, and she had been my model since being in utero. I think you can see on my website. Uh,
Literally in utero, you were
yes,
painting.
yes. If you go onto my website, I think if you look under paintings, I can't remember what it's called or what I titled it, but it's under paintings, maybe at the very bottom. Um,
Is it evolution?
Evolution, yes. Oh,
Okay.
and this will give you an idea of what my oil paintings look like in college.
Is this one of them?
Yes, that's one of them. They never, so
Wow.
I painted that when I was 6 weeks pregnant with my daughter.
So, but you knew how to draw, so this was more of a stylistic decision.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was trying to tell you earlier. It's like I had just come back from Japan and I was really influenced by just Japanese animation and illustration that was in the pop culture. And this would have been in 93 when I went to Japan.
Yeah.
So that was right before then I started my last year of college with, your thesis work, and it's time to like break away from tradition, uh, that sort of thing. So I went in this other direction where I was doing like simplified figures and um, transparent clothing, and I did a lot with composition. Doesn't not so much in this piece; it's very centered.
Yeah.
But, um,
Look at the difference between this one and this one. It's
oh, I know
crazy
it's
in style.
crazy. But the little this was the very first painting that I did in that series. Okay. And I was 6 weeks pregnant, and that's when I had this vision of what would my daughter look like. Um,
Oh,
I'm not knowing that if it was a girl or a boy or whatever, but this was just sort of this it was a
okay. I imagined you painting the scans or something. So it was more of prediction than actually a portrait of her. Yeah.
right. No, there was no ultrasound at that time for me. I mean, I must have had an ultrasound, but I was actually living in New York at the time. I was going to
Geez, you've
um
lived everywhere. Holy moly.
I really haven't, but I did win a residency, for my last year, the first semester of my last year of college. A lot of art schools, not all of them, but there was an affiliation program with a collection of art schools, and they would send a student every semester to this group, and it was called the New York Studio Program through Parsons, and it was in Tribeca. It was amazing. But so when I went to that residency, this was the first painting that I painted while being there.
Hmm.
And my husband and I got married in New York City. So that's where this painting originated. That's where I was at.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was just kind of my vision of her. And then the other painting is when she was 17 years old. And this was,
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah,
She's
this was,
beautiful.
thank you. She's been my model since, when I say in utero, literally from the very beginning. So when she went away to college, I, I don't know. It was like I knew that this was going to be the end of an era, and at the same time that she left, it was really the same time that I had exhausted my technique that I was working on aquaboard. I exhausted. There was starting to like not be as much curiosity. I can say from I started working on aquaboard in 2007 all the way to 2013, 2014. I was working on the surface with this very precise technique, um, with my daughter, sometimes some of her friends, but mostly her most paintings were of her. And I
Hmm.
did about 600 paintings in that time period. And
Holy crap. That's like, I think that's more than my entire career.
not that they were the greatest paintings, I mean, but I had was selling so much. I mean, I was selling them like as fast as I could make them, selling them.
Yeah.
And because I had all these galleries, right? So it's like I got to turn out the paintings. And so I didn't get burnout. I wouldn't say that. I would just say that I just got to a point where she was leaving and I knew there was change. I just could feel it like deep inside that there was going to be a big change. And I was open for it and excited for it.
Yeah.
And so this was when Instagram started, so I was on Instagram, and so I was posting my work on Instagram of her. And then when she left, I was just kind of looking for inspiration. I was open for inspiration, I guess you could say. And one night I was in my studio, and my littlest daughter was 2 at the time.
So is this your 29-year-old, this 17-year-old in the picture?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
that's a painting of her when she was 17 that you were
Okay.
just had up. Yes. So when she went away to college, and then here I'm in my studio, and at night, and I turn and I see my 2-year-old just sitting up on a table in her underwear. And that was that painting that you were just showing earlier that I said, we're going to come back to that
Oh
one.
yeah, that thing
Um,
is
that
crazy.
one right there. Go back down. That was this, if you go back down, you just had it up
Isn't
or
it the
it,
first one on the page?
well, that one's different. That's a newer version, but the older one,
Ah, is it this one?
yeah, that's the newer one though.
Okay.
That one's 30 by 30
This
inches,
one?
but that one right there, yes, that one. That
Yeah,
was
it's
a little
beautiful.
study. That's 12 by 12 inches.
Where is
Okay.
this now? Is this sold?
No, I wouldn't sell that one.
You wouldn't sell it?
But that's the very first painting that I did of my baby. So she
Wow.
was 2 there, and that was that moment of inspiration when I was like, this, I have to paint this, and this was after my daughter, and I have to say, my oldest daughter, she we were a team, Jeff. We were a team. She was
Hmm.
like an amazing, but she was actually a professional model. Um, she had like she still has a graceful presence, beautiful. She just knew what to do. Like she inspired so much of the work. Like with the striped arms, sock arms, she
Oh,
put
those are all her?
those are all her striped sock arms. Not every single one, but most of them are her. Anytime, I mean, pretty much every day, just looking at her would inspire me. And here I'm living in
Man, what
this.
a lucky thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was.
yeah, kids are a blessing anyway, but then when they're also a good model, that's great.
Right, right. And she was amazing. And then my son, that's the 21-year-old, he never wanted me to take a picture of him. He didn't want me to paint him. He wanted nothing to do with it. So there was never any like rivalry or,
Hmm.
like, why aren't you painting me? It was never like that. So my daughter and we were really a team. Um it's just like every painting I painted of her would sell. It was just like it was just a really great era, and it worked so well for making work, being inspired by her, being inspired to make the paintings and all that. So when she left, though, I never got sad, I never got depressed, I never felt like, oh no, it's over now, because I don't know, after going through all that I'd been through, I knew that there was just something really amazing that was going to happen. I couldn't wait for God to show me,
Hmm. Hmm.
I just had a real big optimism. And then, so when this was the painting, this was the girl that was like, there it is. It was that same feeling of like inspiration, like, oh, I got to paint this. This is amazing. And I painted it. And I remember I put it up on Instagram because this was back when, I mean, this was probably, yeah, 2013, 2014, somewhere around there when I did this one. And and the response was incredible. So, back to even what we were saying earlier, where you said, how your other guest was talking about, you don't want to make work from a codependent place. You don't want to be, you want to make work that's authentic and not, just to please other people. Whenever the response was so positive, it was kind of like whenever I had those first 3 watercolors in that show at Wally Workman Gallery, and the response was so incredible. It was like, this is it. I have to go full force into this. It kind of like, it's just like a little bit of positive feedback is saying, I'm worried, just like in a critique. When you're critiquing your students and they've got something that's working, you're going to go crazy over that. And then that helps guide them in the right direction. It's not like they're being codependent, but and they're not sacrificing their authenticity or anything
Right.
like that. It's just, and that's how I used Instagram in those early days to really just to say, what are people responding to? Like that's what they see, because we are so close to our work that I'm practically blind to my work. I have no idea. I mean, I kind of have an idea. I mean, there's a feeling. I get my painting to a place where I have that feeling,
Hmm.
but is it working? I don't know. Is there something in the painting that's not working? We all need that feedback, all of us do.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of us. Doesn't matter. I mean, I say this to my community all the time. It's like I have my people that I trust, especially just one very close friend that is I trust that he understands my work and understands where I'm coming from. And he is I could not my work would not be where it's at without his feedback. So anyway, going back to that little painting you had up, that was the first painting that led me to say, okay, I have permission now to switch from like young adult girls to toddlers. for painting subject. I like it just gave me peace in my heart that I could make that switch and it was going to be okay. And I
Hmm.
just went with that. I just went with that. And so that painting that you just had up, I titled that one Lost because I was lost. Right. I didn't I didn't really know where I was going to go next. And that was the piece that said, okay, I can paint a baby. I can paint toddlers. It's going to be okay. And
Hmm.
then the next painting was then, oh, well, I did several of her and I'm working in a way how I painted my oldest daughter. My oldest daughter is very like quiet and guarded and this daughter is nothing like my first. My youngest daughter is like a little fairy and she's free spirited and she's just like very open. Um, and so when I was working on paintings for her, I realized, well, I'm painting her, but I'm painting her like Neve. I'm like, I need to I need to just go with I need to like play around with watercolor. Like, I just got into a very experimental place with the watercolor. And so that's when I started using watercolor in new ways. And I started like pooling it on the surface and kind of taking like things from this technique and then also applying it to new ways of working with watercolor. And so then the next big painting turning point was the painting that I have behind me, which I know it's on
Is that on the
Instagram.
website or?
It's on the website under, um, it's under Immerse. So yeah, the Immerse paintings were like a big breakthrough of technique for me to change things up and have more fun with the watercolor. And so that's a painting that's behind me. And this one was titled Open. And this was the first one in that technique. And this was like so well received.
I
Um,
remember when you started doing this.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
whoa, that is too cool.
it's really, really fun. It was a technique that I didn't know what I'm like you, as you can see, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm
Well,
just trying.
I can't see that, but I know the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, the underpainting is really what's important. And that was something that I just developed over time. So, when you have the underpainting, you have your foundation built very strong, and then
I
you
don't know
can.
what that means. I'm not a watercolorist. What's the underpainting? The brown?
No, I did it in turquoise.
The turquoise is the underpainting.
Right. So then,
Okay.
so then that just opened up just a huge fun chapter in exploring uh, just a totally different effect. And and then what was really exciting about this is I realized at this point that I needed to get out of a lot of galleries because I was overcommitted to galleries. So
Mm-hmm.
I put all of my eggs in one basket, and I went in with my Boston gallery at the time, Gold Gallery, and they took these to Art Hamptons in 2015, summer of 2015,
Mm.
and they were really well received. And then following that art fair, then I went and had a solo show in Boston, and I started getting commissions for babies that were
Mm.
big. And oh, I gotta say too, Jeff, is that um, I love the galleries, all the work that they do, and I know that they work really hard for their money, but it's really hard for us to break even whenever we have to give half. So that was, and I wasn't really getting enough for my paintings. So the galleries at a whole, they were at the time selling my paintings to that really easy price range, which is like $2,000 to $3,000, which you could just sell paintings that price all day long. So they weren't really forcing my prices up. So that's when I switched to this technique, I quadrupled my prices because I felt like that's
Really? That's brave.
yeah. But then I started getting commissions and people didn't bat an eye at it. I mean, I started getting commissions for the babies, and up until that point, all my commissions were my daughter's age, like young adults and teenagers.
Hmm.
Which um, a lot of people. I just want to throw this in there because this is something I talk a lot about in my mentoring. Is that people will ask me like, how do I get commissions? How do I get commissions? Do you hear that a lot?
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my experience is that you really have to work at getting your paintings to look very unique, and then they want that painting of their child, so it's like all
Mm-hmm.
my commissions have always been connected to my paintings that already exist. But I feel like maybe some artists put the cart before the horse when they're like, I want commissions, I want commissions, and they're
It's exactly my experience.
established something that's unique about the work to where that doesn't, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's more difficult that way. But I like when I came out with a new body of work, every time it seems that that drives more commissions of people wanting that. So,
So these
uh,
commissions go through the gallery?
no, that was another thing that I changed because I was so dumb. I've learned everything the hard way, Jeff, everything. I've learned the hardest way. I was
Don't
like,
tell me you signed contracts and were bound.
oh my gosh, no, I just was giving a gallery half of the money on a commission when all they did was give me a phone number, you know?
Yeah.
It's like so
I,
dumb.
when you said that galleries are great, this, that, and the other. Yeah, there are some that really earn it.
Yeah, they
But as
do.
far as I'm concerned, most galleries don't earn it. I had Scott Jones on a while back, and I mentioned this to him, and that I had a gallery. I was speaking to a gallery who wanted me in their gallery, and I went in there to talk to them. I couldn't be in them because I'm not in a gallery, and I like it that way. I want to stay that way as long as I can. But again, I have no issues with galleries. But here's the point. She starts lamenting to me that her rent and her expenses are like $10,000 a month, and this was a few years back. I said my studio rent is $3,000 a month, and I've got my family of 5 to support only on my paintings. You've got like 150 artists in this place, and your expenses are only 3 times mine, but you have 150 times as many artists selling paintings. Don't complain to me about your expenses. Like, you can't be serious.
Right,
The math doesn't check out. If you've got 50 artists, 30 artists, 100 artists, and every artist is supporting themselves, and you're making the same amount of money off of 30, 40, 50, 100 times as many people, then your expenses better be 30, 40, 50, 100 times as high. It's
right.
just not right, you know? But whatever. Anyway,
It,
that's my soapbox on galleries.
and the gallery model just for me didn't make sense. And like I said, it took me a long time because I'm no longer in galleries. I pulled out of the
Yeah.
galleries maybe 2016. But the thing is that one of their business model gets all of everything, all their product shipped to them for free with no
Mm-hmm.
commitment. And then when it doesn't sell, the artist a lot of times picks up the shipping back. Do you know what I'm saying?
And
Like,
prevents their artists from showing anywhere in that state
right,
oftentimes, or city. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's a
So
crazy business model. And so many poor artists fall victim to it.
because our egos are so fragile, we're just like
I
so
know.
desperate for anyone to take our stuff and like it, and it's so bad. But um, yeah, I finally got out of the galleries, but I did go to some art. 2017, I started going to some art fairs with a gallery just to do the art fairs, and sometimes I'll do like a piece for a group show. I remember, I think it was 2018, I did 4 pieces for the Arcadia Gallery 5 and Under show. They invited me to submit some pieces to that. So, and I like that sort of situation. I know I'm going to give up half, but it's just like, it's just a one show commitment and it still keeps you active with your colleagues and stuff. So it was 2017, 2018, I did like Chicago Expo and I did Palm Springs, and I did the chroma pieces, which are on my website. For Chicago, I did the Smolder series, that's on my website, and then the chroma pieces, and just really just playing with techniques. I love material. I just love it. That's kind of I think the driving force. There's emotion of the subjects. That's a huge driving force, but then also the materials.
Is it just me, or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari Paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting.
Are really exciting to me, and like pushing material and pushing surfaces. And then in 2019, I started, that's when I started the Patreon. And
oh, I wasn't aware you had a Patreon. Is that where the alligators come from?
That's where the alligators came from. That's it.
Cool.
Yeah, alligators came from Patreon. And I didn't really know what I was doing. A few different people that I respected said, you should start a Patreon. So I started my Patreon, and then it was shortly after that, it was 6 months later, were lockdowns. And like I said, when I started,
that's good timing.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was really doing with it, but I just started doing some time-lapse videos on my phone and posting that and doing Q&As and just kind of letting the community guide me. And then the lockdown started the alligator painting challenge. And we have an Instagram page, the Alligator Watercolor Community Instagram page, and that's all driven by these bi-weekly painting challenges that were started during lockdowns that really helped people cope with lockdowns, and then it really bonded the community. So now I have like the content that I make for my Patreon it has like the 2 challenges a month, has two painting challenges a month, and then at the end of the month I do what's called Allie's Insights, where I just pick out some of my favorite paintings to talk about, and it's all positive. I don't say anything negative, because I don't even think it needs it, because these artists are amazing. It's all across, all over the world, international, all skill levels, and so just with positive reinforcement, artists are just, they're blossoming and flourishing in the community. We have a private Discord community where we have all sorts of different topics that we talk about. And I needed a name for the Discord community. So that's where alligators came from. And
it's really creative.
It wasn't even, I don't know. It was just kind of fun. It wasn't even serious. And then it just got serious. And that's like what it is now. Because we've tried to change it like a couple of years in. We're like, what should we name our community? And it's like nothing. It's like, we're the alligators. We can't get rid of it now. But
I don't know. I kind of like it. I mean, you did make it up, so it makes sense. But it fits your personality. I mean, from the short time I've known you, you just have this sort of light, kind, bubbly personality. And to have a sort of fun, not too serious name like that seems to work for you.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because you don't take yourself too seriously at all.
No,
yeah.
I don't. And the community too. And that's the thing, with our challenges, I'm like, this is this challenge, I throw it out there, an idea, a concept to play around with, but it can be whatever inspires them. There's no right or wrong, but the community. And then I also have like a Q&A that I do every month. I kind of got away from the painting videos, because I really do those just for my online courses now.
Okay.
Energy into that.
Man, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, I do. The content creation. There was one thing I did for maybe a year. I did in my Patreon, I did a podcast called Alligator of the Month, and we featured one of the alligators. And so it was called Reserved Parking Alligator of the Month. And so it was fun, but I'm telling you, a podcast is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is so much work to do the podcast. Like, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, you hear that, audience? So anyway, to become a patron, blah, 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 blah.
And it is so much work. And I did it for, like I said, for about a year. And then I said, I cannot do this anymore. This is taking way too much time. And people will write and say, Allie, when are you going to do Alligator of the Month? Then I went to like an Instagram Live so I could just talk to an alligator a month on Instagram Live. And I did that for a while. But it was just, that's really the point when it was just too much for me. You know, you have
Mm-hmm.
this certain point where you just can't do it. Um, so, yeah, and let's see, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Golden reached out to me about the portrait set.
Yeah.
And then we've been working on that product for a few years, and that finally came out this last December to market.
Mm-hmm.
That's this. Did I give you one of these,
You
Jeff?
no, you said you were going to send me
Oh,
one.
okay. I need your address. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
wish you
no,
would.
no, no. It was Golden that I can't remember. Either you or Golden said you were gonna. It's okay. It's totally fine. But yeah, it sounds really exciting though. You did give me a bunch of stuff though. I walked out with an armful of stuff. Golden was really generous
Yeah,
at that booth.
they were like, we should have brought more stuff. You know,
Yeah,
that was their first time doing the Portrait Society,
yeah,
and it was my first time doing the Portrait Society. So I didn't really. I knew it was the vendor room was. I knew it was a big deal, and I knew a lot of people, but I really wasn't prepared for how amazing it was.
yeah. They did well too because, well, like you said, she said she wished she brought more, but I think what happened was there was nothing left by the
Right?
time I'd met you at the booth. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of people there hungry for art supplies.
Oh, yeah, well, it's just so fun. It's
It
so fun
is.
to keep the makers of the paints and the brushes and see the people behind the scenes. And like I said, it's my tribe, you know. It's
Hmm.
just very, and even Golden commented about that, how it just seemed like the biggest group of really authentic artists.
Yeah. Are
You know?
they, you know what amazes me? I had an experience. Someone came to my studio a couple days ago, one of my old students, and he mentioned how an artist who's kind of a new and up and coming artist, he mentioned how he had made a suggestion to do something just for fun with this artist, and this artist said to him, "Well, what do I have to gain from that?"
Mm,
And it made me think about the Portrait Society and all these powerhouse artists and how they just like they're barfing knowledge. Like it's just like they're just completely open. Anything you want to know, here it is all for free. And I mean, you know, you have to pay the Portrait Society, but the Portrait Society puts a freaking ton of work in there and they've got to make a living, right? So,
right.
but as far as the staff goes, it's just all their free labor. It's pretty amazing. Are you going back this year, this coming year?
I'm going back. They invited me to do something. I think one like a pre
Oh, that's great.
maybe on Wednesday. You know how Wednesday they have like a
Yeah, you're going to do a workshop on the day
think I'm
before.
gonna do a workshop before, I think.
Yeah, they still haven't announced the whole schedule. I'm anxious to find out who's doing what.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm supposed to get back to her with a name. I think I'm gonna title it something about the underpainting, the importance of the underpainting in watercolor. Because that's
Yeah.
something a lot of people don't do in watercolor if they're learning it. And I think it's really it's such an easy way to start a painting and build it up. And I
Hmm.
think it
I think
it's
I
really
want to take one of your workshops or maybe become a so how do people learn how to watercolor under you? What options do they have?
well, so I have a philosophy, which isn't, haven't written this down or anything. It's not very refined, but um, I do not, I do not tell anyone what to paint, you
Well, of
know?
course not, but you tell them
Right.
how to paint, right?
So I give them the underpainting thing, okay?
Yeah.
And I show them that. I have my videos on the Patreon. They can watch my videos. They can purchase my videos on my online courses, which is even more in depth. So I tell you exactly how I paint. But like well, my last teaching my watercolors, teaching this, I have an online course how to teach this. That is, let's just paint step by step this eye, you know.
Hmm.
It's I mean, the most basic thing out there. So I did, you know, like with this set, you can paint the lightest, fairest complexion to the darkest complexion, hair, eyes, you know, all of it. And so in my course, I walk through that, right? And so I just chose an eye because that's just something it's just so basic, so simple. But in my All About Aquaboard course that I did a few years for the National Watercolor Society, like in the end, I'm like, here's my, we did this, I did this painting together, but I'm like, you need to set up your own model with, these, some jewelry, some stripes, like do your own thing so that you can call it your own. So I have like a really, I don't know, I'm just really firm on like teaching them to from day one. Just even though it's a struggle, you don't know what you're doing, just start painting and just do your own thing. So I know there's watercolor courses out there and stuff that are like Patreon, watercolor Patreon, and other watercolor communities that are hugely successful. My Patreon, I would not call it pays for itself. Okay. It's stable. Okay. But it's not like, I mean, there are some that are wildly successful, and it's,
Yeah, but
everyone.
that, but what if someone, it doesn't matter how successful it is. It matters what you offer.
Yeah, right. There's just like we're there every week is a new course on how to paint this thing. We're going to paint it together. And I think there's a place for that, like especially for learning. Okay.
Yeah.
But I just can't do it. I can't do it. I want them to just come up with their own images. Don't, just no matter how bad it is, guys, just start doing it on your own. And even though it's like teaching a little baby how to walk, it's very hard at first, but or even like a little chickie hatching out of an egg. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to help them do that. I mean, they have to do it because it builds up their muscles.
Oh, I have that exact same philosophy.
And then
Yeah.
if they're only learning by just copying, then they actually get kind of good at just copying, and then they've lost that muscle to originate the work. But when they start out by originating the work, they just build a muscle that just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So
Hmm.
I'm some of these alligators are amazing. Like they didn't know, had a few little sketches maybe in a sketchbook and kind of interested in learning watercolor, and now they're winning awards, getting accepted into shows.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So, I mean, I think you can, in some of the artists, you can see my influence, but others not. They're learning from me, but their work doesn't look anything like mine. Um,
Well, it sounds like that's because of your philosophy. You're not teaching them how to paint like you. It sounds like you're just giving them things to do, letting them work through it, and then resolving concerns.
or even if they're watching my videos and they're taking my underpainting technique, they're
Yeah,
doing that. They're still evolving it to their own voice, evolving it to their own technique,
that's
which I
great.
think is really exciting. And we also use all kinds of surfaces too. So
Hmm.
it's not just aquaboard, it's homemade panels. I've using white house paint. Like when we were in lockdowns and people could not get places, they could get to a hardware store and get a little quart of washable flat house paint
Mm.
in white. And I'm like, that's going to work. I think it's going to work. And I did a demo and it worked. And it's amazing. It's very similar to aquaboard, but it's such a, people rolling and making their own little panels and stuff, and
Wow.
doing amazing paintings. So I really like and encourage the individual to, just do their own, just whatever it is, whatever your interest is, whatever your colors are, whatever. So a lot of people are learning my palette and my skin tone palette, but they're using it in their own ways,
Oh,
which is
okay.
really neat to see.
Yeah, that's great. And that's how it needs to be, because if there's just a bunch of little alleys out there, then they're competing with Big Alley. That's no good, you
Well,
know?
actually, yeah, I can't remember who it was. Gosh, it was a critic in New York, I think. Years ago, I saw this video of him just giving a lecture, and he said, if someone is just painting like you, they're only strengthening your brand,
Yeah, that's a
you know,
good point.
strengthening
Yeah.
your brand. So,
I'd never
um,
thought of it that way, but that's a really good point. Hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about technique. Otherwise, my audience is going to be frustrated. I don't
you
have a
can
lot of questions about
add
technique
out
because I
if you
don't
want.
know enough about it. But let's see. What's the best way to discover technique here? Well, first of all, I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
So one of the things about, and this is going to be really rudimentary because I'm completely ignorant. But when you do something like, let's say, your daughter right here, let me pull up a couple other paintings. Where's your most refined work? What quality and most
Um,
finished work? More like your daughter here.
not subconscious. Like if you go to like um white.
The reason I want that is because that is the most intimidating to me. That's the
Okay,
reason, you know, because
maybe to
I
black.
don't know how you get there.
Okay, go to black.
Is that not okay? Which one's
You know,
black?
go back up to
Whoops.
painting. That's all right. That's all right. Go down
Black.
to black.
Okay.
There you go.
What the heck? That's watercolor?
They're all watercolor.
How do you get black? That black?
The watercolor, you just do a couple layers of it,
Oh
and then when
my
you spray it, it
gosh.
really makes it velvety and even.
All right, let's say, okay, so tell me a little bit about your approach. I'm assuming you're going to start with a pencil drawing.
Yes,
Do you do the
absolutely.
pencil drawing directly on the paper, or do you work out all the proportions and then transfer it well, on another piece of paper and then transfer it?
That is on directly. I just draw it with pencil directly on the watercolor panel, which is it's a masonite substrate that it has an archivist seal that it's patented seal. It's almost like a plastic sealing, acrylic sealant, a
Hmm.
veneer that goes on top of the masonite, and then on top of that goes the kaolin clay. So it's a panel that is the watercolor is completely removable on. The pencil dissolves with water once you draw on it, so it's very workable in every way.
Do you
Uh,
draw just a line, an outline, or are you actually drawing
right.
shadow shapes and stuff?
Uh, a little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I'll just draw a line drawing with kind of where my shapes and stuff.
Okay.
And then I just start in very, very light and I build it up very, very light, light
And
to
do
dark.
you start, I mean, your skin tones are just gorgeous and have a lot of depth.
Thank
Is
you.
it do you always start with more of a cooler undertone, or does it vary from painting to painting?
It varies from painting to painting, but something like this, which is more of like a golden hour light, I am gonna go in there and with my pyrrole orange and get the orange glows first because that really
Mm.
that helps me kind of preserve that because if I were gonna put any cool colors under that, that's gonna take away from that glow.
Mm.
So this one maybe isn't there's a little bit of it here. Other ones it's a lot stronger where it is just the straight pyrrole orange in the glow. So I'd say that's kind of where I start for this particular lighting. For those paintings, I'm going to start with that orange. And then I have my mix, which is uh, the Pearling Crimson with the sap green. That makes the shadow color and basically kind of my value, like get the value established with, the dark and the light and the form. I'm going to do that mostly with that Pearline and sap mix. And that's
Hmm.
and
That's a warm red and a warm green. So that must make a pretty dang warm brown then.
if you can see this, and I'm
Yeah,
so
let me
sorry
switch
that
screen.
I'm so sorry I didn't send this to you yet, Jeff.
No, don't be. It's okay. I mean, I don't expect it at all.
I put this in the order that I set it up on my palette, but basically, the Pearline and the sap, and I think the Pearlines, it's kind of like an alizarin crimson in a way.
Yeah, well, it looks a lot cooler than my oil version of Paroline.
It is amazing. It
Mm.
almost looks to me, it's like the color of blood. It's
That's how I
very,
describe Paroline. Yeah, so
yeah.
maybe but obviously it's not as warm as the red next to it, but that's
Okay,
Paroline
well, that's
orange.
the
Yeah.
orange. That's that pyrrole orange that I use in the glow for every, wait, okay.
Hmm.
That's the pyrrole orange that I use in the glow.
Right.
And these two together, if you see right down the middle, which it has that split, but that is really, that is skin tone. And it's light to the fairest
Yeah, and
to
then you
dark.
can just push it a little warmer or a little cooler depending on the ratio, huh?
Right, exactly. So that's what I use these two right here in the middle. It's just a balance of those two as I'm establishing my form and just getting the overall value down. And then I start kind of weaving in other colors, maybe some reflected color or in the shadow or in the core shadow is always going to be that the Paroline and sap. And then as it goes towards the light, it's going to hit that. Then I'm talking golden hour light. That's what I use for a lot of those paintings. It's going to be that bright orange, that pyrrole orange. And then into the yellow, which is nickel azo yellow, which for golden, for the core watercolors, that nickel azo yellow is very intense yellow, but other brands, it might get a little too brown. So, yeah, but
So what about the thing that intimidates me about watercolor is making mistakes.
yeah.
And
So
yeah, so how
on
do you handle that?
Aquaboard, you can completely remove it.
You're kidding me.
Completely. Yeah.
Wow.
You just scrub it right off.
So if you can completely remove it, then when you varnish it and you remove the varnish, aren't you going to take the paint off?
Right. You would do that to repaint it or change the color or some things. Yeah, it would remove the paint, but you could mask it off to where it removes like a very clean section, or you can remove it like gradually and then touch it up.
Oh,
Um,
so you can't remove the varnish without damaging the painting. That's not possible.
you would remove the pigment, yes. You would
Okay, because
remove
with an oil painting, you do. That's why that's what I meant early on, is with an oil painting, the whole point of a varnish is, and you may know this already, but the whole point of a varnish is to protect it from dirt. So then in 200 years, you remove the varnish, the painting is brand new and unfettered, and then you put a new varnish on, brand new painting. But that's not the case with this process. If you remove that varnish, you're taking the color with it.
yes.
Oh, that's a bummer. What
Yeah.
if you what if you varnished it and then varnished it again with a different, anyway, that's, we don't need to talk about
Yeah,
that.
you can do that. You can do that.
Yeah. But then if you did remove that varnish, it would only be to clean it, not to repaint it, because you've already, clear
I
coated it. Yeah.
I have a story about one painting that I have. It's I think it's on the white. If you go to my white
Okay.
on my website, I think it's in there. And okay, yeah, go down one right there to the
Oh, look
right.
at that cat. That's awesome. You know,
That was our
there's so
neighbor.
many things going. I said to one of my guests on the 100th episode that my mom would prefer to have a painting with kittens and butterflies and rainbows, and then what Kwang Ho paints, which is tractors in a field, and
Yeah.
or pickup trucks or something. And then Kwang Ho is like, well, if you paint cats beautifully, then it's a great painting. And I'm like, well, here it is. There's the evidence right there, everybody. There is a
Because
gorgeous painted cat that is
cats are
legit.
amazing. Yeah, because cats, their bodies can do anything. They're super graceful and their tail is awesome. And I even had in those early paintings that I did in 94 and 95, I always had a cat because the cats are just this amazing shape. And I loved black cats. I put those in a lot of those paintings. But if
Well,
you
and I
go,
think the point is, well, I think the key to this one is it's not sentimental, and there's nothing wrong with sentimental either. But
yeah,
yeah, this is
I try
good.
to stay away from that sentimental,
Yeah.
uh,
All right. So
sentimental.
we're back to white. Let me get back on
You just
topic here.
went, no, to the white, yeah, and then go down right over to the right with the
Okay.
studded belt, yeah. So that one is 30 by 30 inches, and I sent that one and the one with the cat, those three that are right across from each other,
Mm-hmm.
those all went to
Oh, keep going
Greece.
back to that. Sorry. I'm
That's
I'm
all right.
not doing a good job navigating your website here.
That's all right. I'm sorry if
So
it's
these three, okay.
yes, those three across. Those three went to Greece, to Mykonos for a show. This was probably 2013 or so. And that that one with the studded belt, I could never get that painting back. I could not get it back. And I thought, you know, I just they wouldn't respond to my emails, and I just kind of had given up. Then maybe a year later, I finally get this painting back. And
From
it's
the
in
gallery?
yeah, it's fine. Yeah, right. And they'd finally sent it back. And the thing is, it was covered with mold. It's like they had it in, I don't know, down by the sea. I don't know, but
Oh
it
my gosh.
was like just speckled. The whole thing was just speckled with mold. Whole thing. And I was like, well, I mean, I varnished these things good with the spray. And I just took a microfiber cloth and I got some bleach water, very mild bleach water, and I just wiped that whole thing, and all of the mold just wiped right off of it, and it didn't damage the painting at all.
Amazing. That's
So
great stuff. I mean, I imagine starting on a substrate like that would make it a lot less intimidating to learn watercolor too.
yeah, you can remove it. That's the thing. It's like a
Yeah.
chalk. You don't like where it's going, just wipe it out.
Yeah, that's really cool. Is it easier to turn forms on that, or is it easier on paper?
I think this is much easier. It blends. It can also blend. So this method of painting, like I said, um, it's a lot like egg tempera, that same sort of thing where the white is the light coming through, and it's very transparent. All the colors I use are transparent. And so those little hatches, they build gradually, but also as it's gradually building, I'm using more and less water. The water control and amounts blend it so that like softens it. So it's very, once you
Hmm.
master, once you master aquaboard, it's so easy. Whereas paper, the layers, once they get in there and soak in, they're dry. They're not going to blend, you know, 20
Oh,
layers, like 20 layers down the road, 50 layers. I mean, some of these paintings have 50 or more layers that I've put on. And down I can get to the 50th layer and then I can still blend it with water and kind of rehydrate all of it.
what? Are you serious?
Yeah, it's an amazing surface.
Who invented it?
Well, ampersand. Okay, have you heard of ampersand? They make clayboard and all that. So the inventor is the president of ampersand. Her name is Elaine Salazar.
Hmm.
She is
She's
an amazing. I think she was an artist too, and then in the 90s really got into making substrates for artists. I think clayboard might have been their first, and then they did the textured clayboard then like the 2000s, and that's when I discovered them was for the watercolor.
is the
Uh,
clayboard that they made for Silver Point? Was that what it was originally for?
I don't know about that. I think you can use there are pencil drawings on clayboard that are amazing, and I've heard you talk about Yupo.
Yeah.
Uh, the clayboard is a lot like that. It takes the
Okay.
very similarly, it takes pencil very similar, like velvet smooth. But a lot of oil painters use clayboard. I mean, it's like we have a watercolorist that's an alligator that is doing watercolor on clayboard, and she just uses these tiny little, almost like stippling, and her effect looks like lace. Her or when her watercolors are done, they just have these little
Hmm.
ripple pebbles that almost look like lace. So you can you can use pretty much anything on clayboard, but it's clayboard is very smooth. It's like as smooth as glass. Where aquaboard is more textured, like maybe like a really finely sanded wall. It has
Okay.
a little tiny tooth on it.
Gotcha. So it's more matte.
Yes, very much. And that's why I spray and varnish all of my paintings with matte spray because um, it kind of keeps that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes them like too photographic and too just kind of distracts. I've tried it before. It just is kind of distracting.
Yeah, that would make sense. I've tinkered with gouache a little bit, and then I've tried varnishing it, and it kind of ruins it. The colors come back, but it doesn't feel like gouache anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Man, so am I right in my understanding that you treat these more like drawings in that you're working with a fine brush and hatching? So you're not putting down, with the exception of your work, the work that you showed me earlier of your toddler, that's that whole stage where you got all washy. You're drawing rather than painting, basically. You're drawing with a wet brush.
Yeah, and blending with water. Yeah.
So when you say blending with water, you go back in with just a clean brush and water to kind of taper the.
And I build up very, very slowly with the lightest layers possible. I mean, the layers are so light that it's like that was nothing. Like you
And
would
for
think
what purpose? Does it not turn out as well if you do it heavy?
it's the way the aquaboard surface takes the water, like in the pigment. If it's layered gradually, and imagine like veil, 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 like I'm able to like stack it and blend it in ways like this, to where it like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very light, and over time, it just starts blending really easily. But if you were just to go straight to the color, straight to the value, with one swipe, it doesn't sit on the surface as well. It
Okay.
just doesn't, not as well. It's just for me, it's not what I like. I don't have the value control with like real subtle value changes if it just the pigment gets too thick on there.
Okay. And you say you can just wipe it off. So do you treat this more like oil painting or acrylic where you can bring back your highlights, or are you like with traditional watercolor really trying to protect those highlights?
Okay, so go back to no, because you can scratch out. It's clay, so you can just scratch out with X-Acto knife. You can scratch out all the
That
highlights.
is
But
too cool. But you're not
if
going
you
to scratch out a huge highlight.
well, go back to black. I'm gonna
Okay.
go to black, and then that hair, the highlights on those hair, that's scratched out with. If you clicked on one of those, you'll see
Okay.
that all those highlights on that hair, that's all scratching.
That is really cool.
And then if you go back to mono under paintings,
All these little wispy hairs, I'm sure, are
yeah,
scratched
that's
out.
all scratching. That's all scratching.
Hmm. I'm sorry. Go to what paintings?
Go if you go to
Oh,
mono,
mono.
like
Okay.
under one, yeah, then you can see
Oh man, they look like drawings.
yeah, that's all watercolor on aquaboard.
Gorgeous. What is it about monochromatic that there's
It's
something so
amazing.
beautiful about it? Look at the color on that. Such a beautiful brown. Is that the same combination of Parylene and sap green or something else?
Oh no, that is okay. This whole series that you're looking at
Yeah.
is me just exploring different blacks.
That's a
And
black.
these are all blacks that I got different brands. I couldn't even tell you what it is. I don't even think I wrote it on the back, but I'm just saying what was my motivation for this series is like, I want to get all these different blacks, all these different brands, and I just want to see
Hmm.
how, if I just apply it as one, use it in a monochromatic way, what does it do?
I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple. And to thank you for your generous donations, once you've reached $100 in total contributions, send me an email to theundrapedartist@gmail.com and I will send you one of our spectacular Undraped Artist aprons.
What does
That's
the
a
end?
really, really warm black.
Yeah, it is. I couldn't tell you what color they are now, but I remember that was my motivation behind these.
Now this one looks all like rough, like a
Okay,
painted wall.
so that one, remember how I told you this? The aquaboard is like a very finely sanded wall.
Yeah.
So this is 8 by 8 inches, so this is very small, and so
Oh,
blown
gotcha.
out. So you're really seeing this is a close up of the detail of what the board looks like.
Okay, I
So
gotcha.
whenever you're looking at the bigger paintings, it doesn't pick up that texture so much because the camera is further away.
And do you prefer that texture? Does that texture serve the process, or could you do the same thing on a smooth clayboard?
Oh, the thing is on the textured surface, you can get a lot smoother finish. Whereas on a clay board, a straight up clay board that's like I said is as smooth as glass. It's like marble,
It
it's
just shows all of your
it's going to show
strokes.
everything. And
Yeah.
then if by blending, it's really streaky looking.
And that's the problem with Yupo.
Yeah.
It's really got a lot of strengths, but I don't really love it because you have to just baby it to get perfect transitions.
Yeah, so the texture really helps blend it very smooth.
Hmm. So this is a pretty heavy wash. So this is what it looks like when you kind of just throw it down, I guess.
And then do like a subtractive method.
With water, just water.
Water, yeah.
Hmm. All right, these are cool. And these are all your 29. Well, that's not your 29-year-old daughter,
That
but
was her friend. That was the girl that was holding the cat. She was our neighbor.
okay.
but one of my daughter's friends. Yeah, these are my daughter. These are all my daughter.
She's such a great sport.
Oh, she's awesome.
Yeah, that's
Now,
really cool.
I remember it's a lot of these, they sold and I don't remember. But do you remember Ethan Deal?
No, who's that?
He was a collector. He probably collected one of your paintings. He would go to Portrait Society every year, and hang out in the lounge. He wouldn't ever buy a ticket. He would just get a
Are you
hotel.
serious?
Yeah, he loved our whole group. All that whole when I say our whole group, but the whole group that goes to Portrait
I mean,
Society.
why would you buy a ticket? That's true. You're not going to go to the events. You're just trying to meet
He
an
was
artist,
just
huh?
such a huge fan of,
Yeah.
the figurative realism there, and like from like 2005 till like maybe 2018 or 19. He passed away
Oh,
too soon. He was our age. Uh,
no way.
yeah, he had
Oh,
these complications of diabetes. But anyway, he bought that painting. He bought several of my paintings, but he bought a lot of like the artists that would go to the Portrait Society. He was just a huge fan. You'd
yeah.
probably recognize his face if you saw him.
Yeah, I may. I've been going there quite a while. Well, this has been amazing. Seriously, Allie. I want to become an alligator someday.
So
Seriously, I would
oh my
love.
gosh, that would put the pressure on.
No way. You could teach me so much. I mean, that's the thing. One year it was I totally know what you mean though. Not that I think you should feel that way with me, but I taught a workshop in Scottsdale and Rose Franson joined my workshop.
Oh
Oh
my
my gosh. Like,
God.
Rose, what are you doing? And I knew her already. And she told me she
Right.
wanted to do it. And I'm like, Rose, are you insane? You can paint
Yeah.
circles around me. And she's like, no, I want to learn this. I want to learn from you. I'm like, okay. So she shows up. But it was so much. I'm not telling you this for any other reason, but just because it was a great memory. But ended up being so much fun because she she reluctantly started giving input to other students, but then she'd be like, Jeff, I'm sorry, I don't want to like cross any bound, I don't want to step over any boundaries or whatever. And I'm like, no, this is amazing. And next thing
Yeah.
you know, the workshop has two teachers, but yet she still was so humble that she kept asking for my opinion and stuff, which she really shouldn't have been. But I know what you mean. When I was doing the demo, I was like, Rose Franson is watching me. What the heck? How am I, how am I supposed to do anything to impress this woman? Like, seriously, it
I
was
know.
it was so much fun though. The students were on. I mean, I think the ones that reported to me about it, they were like, man, we just got like double for our money. We just got two for the
That's
price of one.
amazing.
It was
What
so
an
much
amazing
fun.
story. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, the thing is, the Patreon is really for artists that want those challenges, that need accountability. That's really what it's about,
yeah,
accountability partners. A lot of people need that. They are very close friends. It's almost all women. I think probably 98% or 99%
that's the way
women.
every art program is. That's the way mine is too.
And it's a lot of us are like the same age
Yeah,
and kids of the same, but we do have a couple of guys, and it's really it's a support group because we have like the Discord, which is very much just a place for us to be vulnerable and try to get feedback on pieces and like answer questions that we have about the material and all that. And then on our Instagram, we put like the best pieces out there and show off the challenges and our highlights. So, um, but then there it's really centered around the painting challenges, which are assignments in a way, and then supporting each other through all the challenges that we run into
yeah.
during the paintings. So
Sounds
it's
great. Anyone would be lucky to study with you. We'll definitely put a link in there because in the show notes because that'd be good for people to look into it. Okay,
yeah,
so you brought up one thing about that a lot of your students are mothers. Okay, now, last time I asked this question, I got the comment, how come no one ever asks men this question? Because I don't care. So I'm just going to put that out there. I'm a man that isn't home with my kids. So I'm curious as the host for you as a woman who is home with your kids. I want to know. I've got a daughter who wants to be home with her kids
yeah,
and she's studying art right now.
right,
And so I'm curious for that reason. Okay.
yeah,
So I don't need any of the comments that, it's one sided.
right,
But my daughter wants to be home with the kids and she's studying to be an artist. And our feeling is between the two of us is that it could be potentially a really great career for someone who wants to be there, but still help in this economy where almost everybody needs two incomes anymore, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. It's
Right.
just to buy a house and survive,
Right.
right? So tell me a little bit about that. What is it like doing this? Because you've done a lot. I mean, how you've done like thousands of paintings, and yet you've raised four kids
Under
over 29 years, and
9
you're
years,
still at
right.
it.
Right.
How how has it been? What is it like?
Um, so there's an artist that just came to mind. Her name is Victoria Sparks, and I just learned about her through
I think
Fine
I
Art
know her
Summit.
work. She sounds familiar.
It's kind of like washy watercolors and acrylic, and then she puts landscapes in there.
Okay.
But if you look at, and I would just direct any woman out there just to look her up because she's young. I mean, I'm beyond childbearing, but I could tell you from my experience how I've done it. But she's a young mom right now that is just blowing it away with her art and selling and making a lot of money. She's doing it the right way. You know, she's really current with everything, but like all the tricks on advertising and then making prints and like, you know, she has lots of different things going for sales. So I would direct girls, you know, younger women that are having babies to her and check her out because I found her to be very inspiring. But and she does a lot of the things that I did too, which is that you have to integrate the child rearing in with the art making together. So you'll even
Oh,
see my Instagram that, you know, I had the big boppy pillow around my waist and I had my newborns right there nursing while I'm painting.
no
I,
joke.
yeah, one thing that I did was watercolor and not oil. So I don't, you know, and I had this table. What I did was I basically had like a nursery with all the toys I had, depending on the stage that they're in. But like when my son was really active, I had the a big like you know the baby gates that's in a circle. It looks like a little
I
corral
know what you mean.
in
Yeah.
there with all those toys, and he's literally, you know, 12 inches away from me, you know, and so I'm listening to podcasts and radio and music and all that with him, and he's playing with his toys. And then, you know, I had him as a toddler and then my newborn nursing and her on this side, you know, on either on a blanket or taking a nap or in a swing. So I'm with them and talking to them and mothering them and getting up and down, taking breaks, feeding them, whatever, uh, while I'm making the art. And when you start them young, while you're like nursing, while you're painting, while you're working, then they just know. Like I had this invisible line around my area, okay, where the kids they did not go through that invisible line. They knew, and even as I'm nursing, they knew you don't. The baby does not reach out and touch my painting, you know, because they just get a correction then, and then they just learn from
Right.
newborn
Yeah.
not not to reach out, not to grab things, and all that. So first was always my love and care for my babies, and then while they're, you know, being babies and all that, that's when I'm doing the art and painting. Um, I do have one little funny story, and that was whenever Time Magazine commissioned me to paint Taylor Swift for Person of the Year
Are you
in
freaking
2004.
kidding me? She did? They did?
In
Where
2014.
is this?
It's on my, I just recently put something on my Instagram, uh, on a reel,
Yeah,
on a
but you know
reel.
how Instagram is. Even though I follow you, you hardly ever
You
come
don't
up.
know. We don't ever see anyone's work
It's
anymore.
so
That's just
sad.
terrible. It's terrible. But I just recently did a reel right there. See it. But
No, I don't see it. Oh, right here, right here.
so that was a long
Okay.
time ago. That was 2014. And she did not make Person of the Year because the Ebola nurses made it that year. And the reason they were gonna make her Person of the Year, but she had the week before she got Billboard's Person of the Year. So then Time Magazine like just completely removed her out of
Wow.
the whole thing. But anyway, I still was commissioned. I still have that, but I wanted all of my kids to paint something on the painting so they would have like this memorable experience that they got to paint on that painting. And they were freaking out like,
I knew you were going to say that.
And
They're
they
like,
were
this
just
breaks the laws of nature.
yes, yes. They were just like, what? And I'm like, come on, you have to just paint a little bit. It's mom will fix it, but I'll paint over it. It's not gonna. But I just want you to say that you painted. And they were just like, all of them were just like, so yeah,
That is funny. The key
yeah,
is the correction, right? Because it's funny. This is a little different situation, but when I was when my kids were, not toddlers so much, but sort of like preteen to like from like 8 to 12, they're at that really kind of fun stage where they're still kids, but they don't smell yet.
right,
And
right.
I would just love how they would always come in the room and lay on the bed and this, that, and the other, and like watch TV with us in our bedroom and stuff. And and I think back to my parents where when I was a kid, and my parents' room was off limits. Like it was so weird. And it was because they're like, what are you doing in here? Like we just didn't go and mess around in their room. Well, now I'll go home and my 17-year-old with his smelly lacrosse feet is laying across my bed watching TV at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, get out of my room. like, I'm like, where did I screw up? I never
Yeah,
corrected him and I created a monster. I'm like, dude, first of all, you're way too big to be on my bed now. You're making a dent in it. Move along.
that is so funny. That is so funny.
Yeah, you got to set it. You got to set the boundaries early.
Yeah, you do. But also, to really get back to giving some really solid advice for like your daughter and all other young creative girls that want family and they want to make art and be successful with their work. You really do need to have a studio that is in the home. And that's one thing. I have a studio. I'm in my home right now, but I have a studio that does not have internet. Okay. It's an old boarding house. It's very cool. And it's where all my art is. It's where I paint my bigger pieces. Now that my kids are older, I can go down there and paint. But when all the kids are little and you're raising them, you it you have to have materials that are not toxic, or do you know what I mean? At least there's not fumes in the home. Okay, you don't
Right.
want that. You're gonna have to limit yourself to something that's non-toxic. You can have a
You can
table
do that
that's
with oil painting now, thank
you
goodness.
can do it right. You
It's
can do it with oil.
possible. Yeah.
Right. It is possible. Exactly. But just uh, you want to just be aware of that as you're building your work. Okay.
Yeah.
That you do want it to be friendly to the home environment. Um, and then you really have to be in the center of your home, doing all the things that a good mother does. Because the mom really is the heart of the home. I mean, it's true, and it's an amazing thing. It's amazing calling, and um, you got to be able to, start dinner, start laundry, um, just do all those things. Put kids down for naps, get them up for and just kind of there um, in a way that works, and never putting, because for many years early on, I sort of pitted it against each other. Like I can't be successful at this because I have to be a mom, and then like getting upset with both things, not being able to make art and being a mom because I have this pressure to do something. It was just like in my mind, it's all the way that your mindset. It's all your mindset. But just
So how'd
making
you overcome that mindset?
well, let's go back to 2005. It's when I had a major spiritual conversion and I had so much peace. I got so much peace in my life. And I also started
Hmm.
just being aware of the viewers that were viewing my work and like, what do they see? Oh, they see that. Well, that's interesting. Like just making changes
Yeah.
and letting my work flourish from a place of positive reinforcement. So as the world, and as not just one person approving of me, but as just in general, this is what they see in my work that's working. So I'm going to just follow that path and just kind of let that guide, sort of like a micro evolution for my work, but like letting that guide the next painting. Like, well, that was, the blue, like the turquoise, the ultramarine turquoise. That's like my signature color, and that was in the immersed paintings. And those paintings would look totally different if that ultramarine turquoise was red, and it looked like blood. That would
Right.
have a different vibe. Do you know what I'm saying? It would have a
Yeah.
different vibe. It's like just being aware. like that, just little aesthetic things that would help guide the work to be interpreted as a certain way. And that's where I think just having that sort of open-mindedness about the journey of my work helped me just be really positive about it, and then just
But the
being really
pitting part, how'd you get past the pitting part where you're resenting both sides of your
that was it.
both
That was
roles?
it. Just
That was it.
making a mindset change of it being positive.
So looking at both sides is positive, motherhood is positive, your work is positive. You need to make them both a good thing.
Right, and
Yeah.
not say, this is not be a victim, not say, well, this is holding me. I mean, there's days, there's weeks, and maybe even months sometimes where it's like, okay, I didn't get any painting done, you know? And as I think, you and I are I think similar at kind of similar levels with our work, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to a point where you really lose time, and it's like we don't have time, so much time to paint anymore. Back in the day, before we had our communities built and our followers and students and all this stuff, like this constant coming at us, um, back when things were quieter, we could go into the studio and really focus on many hours of painting and get a lot of painting done. But as we get older, it's not, we just don't have as much time. I feel like you have to be really
It's so hard, I know.
diligent. You have to be really diligent to keep those painting hours.
And you
I
don't
mean,
even
if
have to have kids. Your house is a kid. Your bills are kids. Your cars. In other words, everything has to be cared for, or it just falls apart.
life just kind of, it seems as we get older, more
Yeah.
stuff catches to us,
Mm-hmm.
Like my 29-year-old, she's married and she lives about a mile away and she has three girls.
That's
So they're
awesome.
always over, so I'm babysitting my granddaughters, which is amazing. I mean, I drop everything. It's like as soon as the granddaughters are coming over, no, everything goes out the window.
And you have
I'm
3 more models, starting
oh,
right from scratch.
and I do. Yeah, if you go to new paintings on my website, you'll see my oldest granddaughter. I'm starting to paint her now.
No way.
Yeah, and she's amazing because oh, right there, that's her. That's my oldest.
Aw. Well, she's not that young either.
She's 7. She's going to be 8
You
in
have a
November.
7-year-old grandkid?
Yeah,
Holy crap.
yeah. And I did another painting of her that's on the page.
That is so cute. Man, you really have good genes. You really produce some good-looking people.
Well, thank you. It's
That's
my husband.
awesome. No, you're beautiful too. It's both of you guys. I'm curious what he looks like though. You got some good-looking kids. So, man, that's amazing.
Oh, in the middle. If you go down to the second row in the middle, that's also my oldest granddaughter,
this
right
one
there.
here,
The one, yeah, in the middle.
that is
That's
great.
my oldest granddaughter.
What is this? What's this sort
Yeah,
of?
I don't know if you can zoom in close. It's kind of like the new thing that I'm playing with. I did a residency at Golden last year. I went there and it played with all their products, and it's amazing. Well, so this is the next thing that I'm going to be working with is taking this um, acrylic. This is gloss medium, and making like three-dimensional watercolor to layer. So this is just clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
this is clear.
cool. And then you would varnish over the whole thing.
I'd probably varnish it before I put the collage elements on of the
Okay.
clay. So that's actually collage. So that was like a separate piece of clear medium that I worked with and dried, and then it kind of makes like this big peel sort of thing.
And
But
then you just lay it on top?
I would varnish it and then put that on top. Yeah.
No kidding. That's a cool effect. That's a
So
gorgeous
yeah,
painting.
thank you.
Jeez.
I'm really
Well,
excited about
yeah,
that.
I'm excited to see this new thing you're doing. So, I just want to touch on what you had said earlier, though, about the balance. It's interesting because my kids homeschooled,
Yeah.
and on one hand, I was fortunate as someone trying to start a career and maintain a career that my wife stayed home. She was able to stay home, and so I didn't have to necessarily worry about obviously not breastfeeding and all the other stuff. And I didn't have a kid right next to me, but I was also fortunate because I don't know if that's fortunate or not. That's my point. That because they homeschooled, we made a deal with them. I said, when from 8th grade to senior, I said, look, you're only going to be in school 2 hours a day. You're not wasting the rest of the day. So what you're going to do is come to my studio. And if you know my studio, you know it's like Santa's workshop. You can do anything from metalworking, leatherworking, woodworking. You can work with plastics, fiberglass. I have every tool under the sun. I'm a tool junkie. I'm like, so you come to the studio and you've got to learn a new skill. So for the 4 years, my twins were upstairs in the loft and just literally right there. And it was a huge blessing to have them with me for 4 years before they, were adults. But on the other hand, it leads to this question, and that is, it was difficult. It was a huge blessing. I would never trade it. One of the best 4 years of my life. But at the same time, they would come down and be like, Dad, I need X, or Dad this, Dad that. And my concentration would be thrown off for 20 minutes. And I think to me, that would be the most challenging thing, particularly with babies and toddlers. It's like, did you have any techniques for maintaining concentration when you knew in any second somebody was going to cry, or a fight was going to break out, or something was going to happen? You know what I mean? That constant, how did you manage that? Maybe you didn't even have it, but the potential for constant anxiety of what's next,
Right, right. I feel like I'm really blessed too with, because I know, and my 4 kids are completely different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Each one had their own thing. And my first 3 were 7 years apart. Each one was 7 years apart. And then the
That's
last 2 were 3
insane.
years apart,
Yeah.
So it was like the first 3 were kind of like their only children,
Yeah.
so only having like one kid to deal with at a time for most of the day. And so my oldest daughter she's very quiet and just always was in her own space doing her own thing. Didn't really need much from me at all. And then my second one was, especially in the middle school and high school years, he was just incredible artist himself, and inspiring me all the time and having like deep conversations about art history and pigments and the origins of pigments. And so he was always playing very interesting music, and that was always coming out of. So, and then my third, he was different, as like he was very demanding. And so then I got one that was really just always, but then he had like this little sibling that came along. And so then they were always kind of partners,
Oh man,
so
everything's really lined up for you.
it really like lined up. Okay.
Yeah, but I would argue part of this is your attitude, because someone else with the same group of kids might not see it that way.
And I think here's another thing is that I know that some kids are just like, they're really hyperactive and they're just like crawling up the wall. I say, keep their food really clean, try, if you're at home, really try to just from the foundation, keep them off the processed foods. That helps, I think.
Yeah.
But also your attitude, but also having like a creative environment where they can play all the time. And the biggest thing I want to say, and this is totally a generalization. Okay, this is a huge generalization, but I think it's a lot of times the case. Women are really good at multitasking, and men have a harder time with that, I feel like. And so those little interruptions might have really got you off track. Might not affect a woman as much.
Oh, that's true. Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, that's just my own theory, but that's, like I said, a huge generalization. And I don't think it's true for everyone.
Generalizations don't offend me at all.
Right. So,
It's fine.
yeah. Just learning. I'm just a natural multitasker. So little interruptions, it's like, and also when I paint, especially the paintings, they're very highly realistic paintings. I'm painting those on autopilot. Like I can have a conversation with a kid while I'm painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I started doing
that makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, whether you believe in a creator or evolution, it makes sense that the person who who is likely to have to manage multiple tasks is going to be gifted with the ability to manage multiple tasks.
Right.
You know what I mean? It just makes sense, but whatever. So that's why it doesn't offend me at all.
Yeah. And I think some people are just bad. And ADD, I know, is kids have ADD. And so that can be really hard to get back on task if someone's.
And I do have ADD. So that's part of the reason it's challenging. Yeah.
It's hard to get back. It's just like when you phone now. I mean, for so many years, we didn't have the phone to text messaging, like bugging us all the time, And those were the years where we were producing a lot of work. We didn't have that constant.
Oh, I want to go back.
I know it's really hard. And, I try to put my do not one. I think that really helps. Put do not disturb, and that'll help you. Um, but just I think it really having a good attitude, having a really good attitude and really loving and being appreciative that you can do your work and stay home with the babies and kind of had this whole environment that you build around the two working together. And then if a day works out that it's like you've got sick kids and it's like and then that turns into a week of having sick kids and you haven't gotten any work done, just to go very easy on yourself and be forgiving and know that it's not even going to affect anything. It really isn't if you don't
Mm,
get a day in, but you can't let that week off get you to where you don't go back to it, and then
right.
it turns into a month off and a year off and then, just picking up where you left off and just getting back in whatever it is, like making your rituals, keeping to a schedule is very important. But if your ritual is to put on music when you work, to get that ritual going, then that it makes it a lot easier to step into that ritual.
Right.
So it's not like you really have to kind of have the whole, and even the kids will psychologically, oh, the music's on. That mom's in work. Now we're in work mode. We
Yeah.
just
It sounds
trans.
like you really trained them. That's
I,
good.
I tried, but each kid, and then people think, oh, once they're little, they grow up, and then you're all set, you're free. No,
Oh,
no,
no, no.
they still, they need constant companionship and feedback and guidance, and it's amazing. It's amazing. I
Yeah.
love being a parent, and I would encourage your daughter to
Hey,
go
Addie, come here.
for it. Oh, is she there?
Yeah, come here, Addie. Come here. This is my girl right here. This is my mini me.
Hi,
See,
Addie.
imagine her with a goatee.
Wow, you guys are twins. You guys are twins. I just gave your dad a bunch of advice for you. I don't know if you
She
heard it,
can't
but
hear you.
yeah.
She can't hear you, but yeah, no, she's still here every day. It's great. It's a blessing. I'm glad you
It's
see it that way. That's such a cool thing. So this has been a blast. And honestly, I didn't even know some of these things about you. So this whole mothering thing, I didn't know that
yeah.
you had to balance all that. It's impressive how much you produce. It's crazy. That's impressive for anybody, how much you produce. Unbelievable. But I got one final question,
Okay.
and that is if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring artist that you wish you had or that you did have that really helped you out, what would it be?
Well, I feel like, and I feel like it's not a one size fits all on that question because it's really important to find out, what is someone's wants and desires for themselves, for their future and for their work, because some people might have this goal with their work, and one thing might involve needing a lot of money, and another might not need any money. They just want to, become really a master. So there's it's really important to figure out what is your goal with your work? What do you want? Where do you see yourself 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, like your lifetime legacy? Like just kind of get a general picture because um, that I think that's really important to kind of set your sights big, but also then understand that as you're working towards those goals, other things come into the picture. Like that, I never dreamed of this. I never dreamed of that, and it just came along. The opportunity came along, and then Patreon. I never dreamed of Patreon. That wasn't in my thoughts. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but um, these opportunities come along and they change course, and that's great and that's good. But I think um, having big visions, every day, working really hard every day, even if it's one of those bad days like we've just been talking about parenting and you've got a house full of sick kids. I mean, that's like the worst thing I can think of. Like a house full of sick kids or at the hospital with a sick kid with cancer. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that, where you
Hmm.
you literally have to put yourself on the back burner. There's still little things that you can do each day, something little, even like writing down something that inspired you, even if the inspiration was really sad. Like our son, that's our third kid, he has type 1 diabetes.
Oh, I'm
So in
sorry.
7th grade, he got diagnosed with that, and it was a week in the hospital, and it was like a total life change for us. I mean, type 1 diabetes is like every day. to survive. It was like having a newborn again, up all night checking blood sugars and all of that. And still,
Mm.
we don't get sleep because we have to check the blood sugars and things like that. But even in that moment, when that's probably one of the biggest, that actually, when we were in the hospital with that took the breath out of me. Like I didn't even know how I was going to move forward from that. Um, it's still like in that moment, I'm talking as advice, okay? Because as an artist, as a creative, and you're producing your art, you're going to have things, obstacles that come into your life that stop you, that just completely stop everything. But even in that like hospital, um, I was really relating a lot to like Vincent Desiderio's paintings of his son. Um, and also like I brought art supplies to the hospital, and then my son and I painted and built like beautiful memories there. That he's the least of artistic of all my kids. He has no interest in art whatsoever, that one, but he still remembers those painting together and looking out the window and all that, and then just seeing him in the bed and the struggle and the heartbreak and just all of that, like not knowing and all that. It was all inspiring in a way, like the suffering, um, it did something in my heart that was really beautiful when I look back at it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So even the hard times can be very nurturing to your soul and give you a lot of inspiration to continue on your journey. But again, just going easy on yourself. And then the biggest tip I have, I feel is so important, is that you have got to get a mentor. Every single person needs a mentor. And that's why I have the Alligator Watercolor community on Patreon, is because even if I'm not mentoring every single artist in that group, we have then the Discord community that where people support each other. And you need to be able to throw something out there and have support help you say, this is how I navigated that and I got through it and I had success. Like you need that feedback. Um, Artists, each one of us are different. I mean, we have a lot of similarities, but each one of our stories is different. If I listen to your podcast, all these artists, they all have a different story of how they got to where they're at today. And so finding a mentor that is doing something that you love, if we're on your podcast and someone's really relating to their story, it's like, you know what, if you reach out to that artist, I'm almost positive they're going to write you back. Or if you say, hey, could we set up a time to talk, and you offer to pay them for their time to talk to them and tap their brain and show them kind of where you're at in your life and where you want to go, they're going to have great advice for you. So I think, um, having a good attitude, having goals, don't let the hardships in life uh, hold you back. Don't let them hurt you. Don't let them hold you back. Like look at it with a positive mindset that you're going to get through it, and it's going to make you stronger when you get through it, and you're going to have a deeper, like more empathy and compassion for others, and like that's a beautiful thing. And then have a mentor to help guide you through some of these things. That's my
a lot
advice.
more than one, man. That's a bonus
Oh,
episode right there. No, you can get as
one.
many as you want. I don't care. But
I'm done.
seriously, Allie, you're insanely impressive. I'm not just blowing smoke. I mean, you 2 years old, you become hearing impaired. Then you have 2 abusive fathers. Then you have a husband when you have a newborn at home gets cancer. And then you find out your 3rd kid has type 1 diabetes. And you have the best attitude. Like everyone should know you. Seriously. I mean, I feel honored to know you. It's so cool that you told me this story. So that's really cool.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really, all glory goes to God, and I mean that. I couldn't do anything without the healing that I got around. It was around 2005 when I really decided to just open up my heart, and that's what gave me the peace that I always wanted my whole life. So I have to give God all the credit. I really do.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's a beautiful story. So thanks again for being on the podcast. And I hope we stay in touch. I'll see you in DC next spring either way. So
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.